Good morning. We would like to resume the DBCC hearings today, and so all those present yesterday are deemed present today. But we have Senator Cynthia Villar, a new vice chair of the committee, to propound questions of the agencies present here today. Yeah, just to make it clear, this is macro, and we will have a chance to look at each and every agency when we do our hearings on the agencies. Thank you, Senator Villar.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, and I want to ask question based on how the order of presentation yesterday. So I want to start with BSP. I just want to ask Deputy Governor Ginigindo that there are two kinds of inflation, as I've read before. Correct me if I'm wrong, that there is inflation rate relative to the poor, and there is an inflation rate relative to people in general. Because the inflation rate relative to the poor, you consider all the goods that the poor are consuming. So they rate it, and I read in that article that it is higher than the regular inflation rate. Because we're talking here, because the program of government is inclusive growth, so you present to us the inflation rate, which is very low. But last year, I read somewhere that there is an inflation rate relative to the poor people, wherein they get the prices of goods that the poor consume. It seems that the poor consume other things than what a regular Filipino consumes. So, do you have that figure?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. There is only one inflation based on the changes in the consumer price index, Madam Chair. But for purposes of analysis, we take a look at the inflation for the bottom 30%,
Yes.
which would focus on the very poor in the population. Now, with respect to the general inflation rate, let's say for 2014, headline, and we call it headline inflation, was 4.1%. That was for 2014. For the first 7 months of 2015, the average inflation rate was 1.9%. That's for the first 7 months of the year, Madam Chair. Now, what about the CPI for the bottom 30% income households in the Philippines? Now, in 2014, while the headline inflation was 4%, the CPI for the bottom, or the inflation rate for the bottom 30% income households was 6%. Okay? Now, if you want to decompose that into food and non-food, basically the food component rose by 7.5%. So that's food. Now, for the first 3 months of the year, and this is the period where data is available, 2015, January, March 2015, that has gone down to 3.1%.
So if you will look at it, it's almost double.
Well, almost double in 2014. Now, in the case of the first 9 months of the 7 months of the year, 1.9 versus 3.1.
3.1.
Yes.
Almost a little less than double.
Yeah, and if you focus on food, January, March of 2014, it was up at 6.5. For the year, it's down to 4.6%.
For the year of, you said it's 7.5 in 2014.
That's right, Madam
now
Chair.
in 2015, how much?
January, March of 2014, so that we are comparing oranges and oranges, 6.5. But January, March of 2015, it's 4.6%, Madam Chair.
So it's more than double.
Well,
I'm
less
just
than.
pointing this out because this government is always telling us that we want to promote inclusive growth. That means the benefit of the economic gains will trickle down to the poor. And we're so surprised that we have very good growth, but it seems that it's not trickling down to the poor. Maybe this is one of the reasons, because the inflation rate for the poor is higher than the general inflation. Especially for food, it's almost double. And you know that the poor, they consume food first before anything else. So maybe this is the reason why our poverty figure is not improving, because the inflation rate in general is okay, but for the poor it's not. So maybe we should look at this. You know,
Could
that's
we
why
kindly clarify
Yes.
the question, the answer to the question of Senator Villar, so that we are not misunderstood that there are two inflation rates, because we understand that there is one inflation rate, maybe the impact on various goods or sectors is different. Could we clarify that so that we are not misconstrued by everyone?
No, Madam Chair.
you please explain.
Madam Chair, earlier I said that there's only one inflation rate. Now, based on that general inflation rate, we call it headline inflation, we can focus on the key components, and then focusing on the bottom 30%, which we consider to be the poorest. Yes. But the headline inflation affects everyone. Yes.
Okay, very good. That's a clear clarification. For example, in last year's budget sensitivity table, no, a 1% point increase in inflation would lead to a 23.5 billion increase in revenue. Siyempre, mas mahal, tumataas ang bilihin, dadami ang revenue. But there's no change in expenditures, and therefore, a 23.5 billion reduction in the budget deficit. Inflation rate forecast this year is 2 to 4%, or an average inflation rate of 3%. However, this year, is it correct that it's likely to register at 2%? Perhaps part of the question would be, does it mean that the actual revenues will be lower than forecast by 23.5 billion? Because if the inflation this year will be 2%, that means the revenues will also be much less. Is that accurate?
I can only comment, Madam Chair, on the 2%. This is basically the forecast of the BSP to be the likely inflation rate for the entire year of 2015. Now, with respect to the correlation to revenues, perhaps our fiscal authorities can clarify that.
Chairman, I just want to ask this question in relation to poverty reduction. That's why I'm asking this question. We always accept that we have grown economically, except that we are not reducing poverty as we want it. So I'm asking this question: what is the inflation rate for the poor? So that we can say that maybe the inflation rate is low, but for the poor it's high. That's why we're not reducing poverty. That's why I'm asking this question. And I want to follow up this up because I've read that your advocacy now is financial inclusion. Okay. So the advocacy now of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is financial inclusion, because you're realizing that we have to give financial services to the poor, because in order to bring them out of poverty. So I want to ask this question in relation to this, because if the inflation rate for the poor is high, then naturally they will not get out of poverty, because the goods are relatively high for them. They're not benefiting from the low inflation rate because their inflation rate is high, double the inflation rate of people in general. So now maybe you have realized that, so you have your advocacy now, I've read about, is financial inclusion. So you're bringing down the financial services to the poor. What do you intend to do to be able to achieve that financial inclusion?
Before going into financial inclusion, Madam Chair, I think the numbers that we cited earlier is for 2014 and the first few months of 2015. I think we have to look much earlier than that because the headline inflation versus the inflation rate for the bottom 30% are different. There were years in the past when the headline inflation was much higher compared to the inflation rate for the bottom 30%. In other words, there were times in the past that, for example, in 2010, 2010, for example, the inflation rate was 3.8. For the bottom 30, that was 3.6. In 2012, inflation rate, that's the headline inflation, was 3.2. But for the bottom 30%, the inflation rate was 2.8%. But nonetheless, I think we can
then you should worry that why it's going like that today. I mean,
well, that was only one.
It's your concern also
Yeah.
to see to it that the inflation rate for the poor is almost the same as the regular inflation rate. And that should be a cause of worry why in 2010, 2011, 2012, it's like that. Now it's going up relative to the regular inflation rate.
There is only one explanation,
what's
Madam
the
Chair,
explanation?
because in 2014, that was the year after the series of calamities, particularly in 2013, and then we had also another series of natural calamities in 2014. And when calamities hit, it's the agricultural products or agricultural crops that are mostly hit, and that's the reason why in 2014 the poverty incidence actually deteriorated from something like 24.6 to 25. And the reason, of course, is that for the inflation rate for the bottom 30%, there was
How
an
is it
increase.
going in 2015? Is it
2015,
improving?
no, there was a, as I said earlier, in the first 3 months of 2014, the inflation rate for the bottom 30 was 5.7. For the year 2015, it's down to 3.1%.
Okay.
But even as we abstract from all of these numbers, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, we do realize, and I think this is not only unique to the BSP, but this is also true for the government in general, that we need to make economic growth more inclusive
Yes.
and, of course, more sustainable. Now, going back to the question of the good senator, how do we intend to bring financial services down to the grassroots?
I'm asking that question because of a study of PIDS that the income of farmers are not increasing, and one reason is the lack of socialized credit. So I'm very, because there are two reasons: lack of mechanization, which brings the labor cost of agricultural produce higher, and lack of socialized credit. Alam naman natin yung mahihirap nagfa 5-6. And alam mo naman yung 5-6, that's 7,200% a year. So, hindi talaga ikaw kikita, doon ka na pag nag 5-6 ka. So, we have to remove that 5-6 and make the financial services accessible to the poor. So, I read that your program now is financial inclusion, so that solves one of the problem why agriculture is not competitive in the Philippines, the lack of socialized credit. So how do you propose to do that?
Well, there are two issues about implementing socialized credit, Madam Chair. One is the issue of lack of collaterals, and second is the issue of lack of credit history. And precisely the trust of the Bangko Sentral is precisely to address those two issues. Now, by promoting microfinance, we have allowed microfinance and microfinance-oriented banks to grant credit to small businesses without collateral and without credit history. That is as far as microfinance is concerned. That allows people to borrow up to 300,000 pesos from the participating banks without the benefit of collateral and credit history. In a bigger way, we have also promoted CSF, Credit Security Fund, which allows cooperatives to access credit, again without collateral and and without history in terms of credit. And this actually leverages on the counterpart funds shared by Land Bank, DBP, IGLF, and the local governments. Now, on this basis, Madam Chair, we have generated nearly 1.8 billion pesos, still a modest amount, but this has benefited more than 450 cooperatives and 14,000 direct beneficiaries in terms of individuals. Now, with respect to also making financial services available to more people in the grassroots.
Like insurance. They need also insurance.
Well, 167 banks as of the second quarter of 2014 are now catering to micro enterprises loan clients. 69 banks serve micro deposit clients, and 40 banks are now delivering micro insurance services. 32 banks are dealing with micro agriculture loan clients, and 18 banks provide microfinance plus for expanding micro enterprises. We are doing this on the basis of the view that expanding the economic pie is not sufficient. It is important that we make growth more inclusive.
I've talked to the Land Bank, and they said that because this is one of the problem of agriculture, so I'm trying to teach mechanization, promoting mechanization at the same time trying to make accessible to our farmers the socialized credit. I talked to them, and they said they give the microfinance and the small banks loan at 4% to be relent. To be for lending to farmers, and they encourage them to add 10% as do they follow that? Let's say 4 plus 10 is 14. That's reasonable, but some complaints that when they borrow from them, it's not like that, it's higher. So how do you supervise this to see to it that the loan should remain at a certain rate so that the farmers can make money, diba?
This is for the Land Bank, Madam Chair, to do. BSP supervision is limited to the Land Bank per se.
But you are promoting financial inclusion. Maybe you should be there also to help the Land Bank, because the Land Bank was saying that they cannot force these microfinance companies and these small banks to lend at 14. That's the desired interest rate for them. 4 plus 10.
The credit market is basically market determined, Madam Chair. We do not want to administer interest rate ceilings, even on the small farmers.
Poverty is the biggest problem of the country. I would think that the Land Bank and the DBP exist to help the country solve its problem. It's not supposed to make profits. It's a GOCC. GOCCs are not supposed, their first concern is not to make a lot of profit, but to help in solving the problem of the country. So I would think that it is our responsibility to force them to help the farmers. They're not supposed to be just like the ordinary private banks. They're there to help the farmers. And to my next question, I saw the budget of the Department of Finance. There is an increase from 16B to 55B. And I asked Senator Recto if I am reading it wrong, because how can a budget increase from 16B to 55B? That's extraordinary. And he said that you're giving 30 billion to Land Bank and DBP with that 30 billion. So I thought that we are merging DBP and Land Bank. Are we merging DBP and Land Bank?
Madam Chair, there is a proposal to merge Land Bank. Discussions are ongoing. We're waiting for an executive order, if I believe, to make that happen. The capital is needed because the BSP has implemented Basel III, which requires a higher level of capitalization for banks.
wrong, if GOCC is increasing its capital, I thought that they go to Congress and ask for legislation increasing their capital. Because I remember the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation went to me and would want me to file a bill to increase the capital of Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation. Is Land Bank and DBP exempted from this, considering that they are GOCCs?
Well, that is why it's included in the budget, and once approved, which is a legislation, that would...
There is no move. They haven't talked to us to file legislation increasing their capital. So why will we include it in the budget of 2016?
Well, our impression is that they have space in their authorized capital.
So they don't have to ask.
Yes, but the budget, if approved, which is legislation, would authorize that increase.
So because I'm questioning that, because as the BSP said, we have to do financial inclusion. And I think it's the DBP and the Land Bank who should do that. We cannot force the private banks to do that. But as GOCCs, it's their responsibility not only to make money, but also to help our agriculture prosper. And if they're not doing that, I don't think they deserve our support. Diba? They have to prove that they are supporting agriculture because they are government-owned corporation and they're supposed to help the country solve its problem. And now we're giving them 30 billion, so they have to explain what they're going to do to make them worth our 30 billion.
We could probably ask Land Bank and DBP to also present to us in the hearings. We will request them to come. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes. May I also put on record, Senator Villar, and for the rest of the body, I would like to find out, in line with your question, we already have a law from 2007. This is the MSME law, or RA 9501. Actually, I authored it. That's a micro and small and medium enterprises law, which requires lending institutions to allocate at least 8% of the loan portfolio for micro enterprises, which is what you're talking about, because we saw this problem. It's been a perennial problem, as Senator Villar stated. So again, is this being supervised, overseen by the BSP? Because there is a corporation called SB Corporation. Is that under your supervision? That is supposed, not under you, under DTI perhaps, that is supposed to lend to farmers, to micro entrepreneurs, etc. So who's the supervising authority of the implementation of the 8% mandatory lending to
And the
MSMEs?
Agri-Agra law that they're supposed to...
Isa pa yun. I'm also the author of the Agri-Agra law, both actually. Tama yung tanong mo. Yes, yun na nga. Again, because we're on the same page, and having been here for 18 years in this chamber, I filed that in 98, and it was enacted into law in my first or second term. This is already my third term, so I'm glad you mentioned it, Senator Cynthia. The MSME law and the Agri-Agra law, both of which I authored in 98, but enacted only in 2007 or 2008. So we would like to know the supervisory authority. Is it the BSP? And how far are we in terms of implementing both Agri-Agra and MSME? Perhaps Deputy Governor Gunigondo could answer that.
I don't have the specific numbers today, Madam Chair, but basically there is lower than what is required in terms of compliance because the demand for these loans is much lower compared to what is required under the law. And therefore, since the law also provides for substitutionary compliance, the banks are therefore complying with this requirement by buying government securities, for example.
I think it's not being implemented because you gave an alternative to banks.
That is under the law, Mr. Chairman.
But
Madam
you know, maybe we should change that, because if you give them alternative, then they won't go to agriculture because it's more risky. I mean, you should not have given them alternatives if we want to develop agriculture, diba?
I think in the amendments, let me review because that was 2007. Under the amendments to the Agri-Agra law, I took out the alternative because I wanted to focus on agriculture. Let me check.
Oh, yeah.
Can you check the amendments? to the
Because I
Agri-Agra?
think they gave an
Precisely, I took out the
alternative.
alternative. No, tinanggal ko yun. Tinanggal ko yun. Can you ask your staff to check? It's just,
Yeah.
my memory just
Madam Chair,
fails me.
can I... cite the numbers. Banks continuously provided credit accommodations to micro, small, and medium enterprises pursuant to RA 6977. This was amended by RA 8289 and 9501. So our staff will be looking into that. Now, MSMEs funds total 396 billion pesos, Madam Chair, slightly up from the previous year's 387 billion. Now, this resulted in the banking system's overall compliance of about 10%. Now, based on the required 10%, this is something like full compliance with the law. Now, we're trying to find out if there is an allowed substitutionary compliance based on the two revisions to the law.
Yeah, how about the agri-agra? What's the performance? I read in your report the agriculture is the lowest, the lowest loan amount given is to industries in agriculture.
The bank set aside total of 336.7 billion of their loanable funds for agriculture and agrarian reform credit under RA 1000 or the Agri-Agra Reform Credit Act of 2009. This was higher, Madam Chair, than the previous year's 303.9 billion. Now, rural and co-op banks' overall Agri-Agra compliance ratios of 18.3% and 40.2% were higher compared to the required ratios of 15% and 10% each.
Kasi this is very important.
Could you
18% and 40% versus the requirement of 15 and 10. So there is higher higher compliance, Madam Chair, for the rural banks and cooperative banks.
But in the study, the reason is lack of socialized credit. If we are doing it enough, then that should have not come out of the study.
I think we should ask the PIDS on that, Madam Chair.
Yeah, so maybe we can have a separate session on that.
Yeah.
So, because the government is always saying that the aim is inclusive growth. We should promote inclusive growth. And if there's something wrong with the legislation that would, no, we can correct the legislation, and or if there is something with the IRR, then we can correct the IRR. It's not wrong to correct something that is not working, di ba?
let's just clarify, what was the substitution? Because I recall that was the bone of contention then, and we took out the substitution or made it stricter for banks to comply to serve the agriculture and the agrarian reform sector. So when our BSP says that there is still substitution, that was the original Agri-Agra law.
That's what we're trying to find out, Madam Chair. We
Yeah.
can come back later.
Yeah.
Our staff is trying to find out what those substitutions
Took out
are.
the substitutions. I'm wondering now. That is the why it was amended, because the original law had substitution, and the reason why I amended it in 2007, enacted in 2009, was to take out the substitution. But if you're saying meron pa rin, ano yun, yung fine print ng batas binalik sa original. It doesn't make sense.
No, we will find out, Madam
Yeah.
Chair.
So we will, Ms. Chairman, will go back to them after a while, yeah, because I have to leave at 10 o'clock. I just want to proceed to the next report, the NEDA, yeah. So I just want to ask NEDA, what is their policy with regards to importation and local production of agricultural products? What is our priority? If we produce the product at a high price, we would want to import and not encourage local production. What is your policy on that?
Madam Chair,
For example, rice. We produce rice based on statistics, 10.50 per kilo of palay in the Philippines, and in Vietnam it's 5.50 per kilo of palay. What is your policy of that? We'll just import from Vietnam and we will not encourage any more rice production in the Philippines?
we don't have such a policy.
Clarify that policy, because I've heard that The policy of NEDA is if you can import cheaper, you import than produce it in the Philippines. I just want to be clarified. What is your policy on importation of agricultural products?
It's not has and
Yeah,
has never
that's why
been
I
our
want to
policy.
clarify. I'm so surprised.
Yeah.
So I just want to seek some clarification from you.
What we are trying to do is to precisely achieve inclusive growth by ensuring that rice prices would not unduly spike during times of during periods when our local production falls short of local consumption. That's when we should allow imports. But if we don't allow imports, even as we are seeing,
Not the question.
Yeah.
I can understand that if we're short, we import.
That's our that's our.
But you
okay.
don't discourage local production even if our production cost is high.
Pero we never took
Okay.
that position.
I just want to make sure because that's what they're saying. I want to ask this with regards to the importation of rice. Importation of rice. Because in the importation of rice, when we're short, we import from logically Vietnam because it's the cheapest compared to Thailand, which are the countries nearer us. So we presume that we can import cheaper from Vietnam. But the problem is, I've been telling them, together with the Bureau of Customs, both the former Bureau of Customs head and the present Bureau of Customs head, that the NFA should import, not the private sector, because the NFA, it's easy for the Bureau of Customs to monitor smuggling if only the government is importing. Because if they allow private individuals to import, then the Bureau of Customs become confused. Because if only the NFA is importing, then any importation aside from the NFA will be declared smuggling. But they said that the NFA said that they don't have the money to import because that will entail a lot of subsidy from the government. And I asked them, if you import from Vietnam, how much will it cost you when you sell it to the NFA buyer at 27 to 32? Do you lose money? They said they don't. The only thing, the subsidy is the foregone taxes. They don't pay taxes. And then the Department of Finance will compute the foregone taxes and they will include it in their tax collection and then they will charge it to NFA. But actually, there's no money out in terms of subsidy from government because of the low price from Vietnam. If they sell it to the NFA buyers at subsidized price of 27 to 32, there's no loss. There's no loss, yes.
Madam Chair, actually they make money whenever they import. So I don't know where they're coming from.
They said that the justification is that, I'm explaining to you, so you're part of the people who decide on importation.
No, in fact, if I may clarify, Madam Chair, because DOF sits in the NFA Council, we provide them a loan, no? And we suggested that this be liquidated because we know that they were going to make a profit. The tax that they're referring to is paper tax because it's a TEF.
Consider them a subsidy to NFA.
Yeah, but from a cash standpoint, they make.
From cash standpoint, there's no out. But you consider it a subsidy, and they said that the government cannot subsidize NFA too much, so they don't want to make importation.
That is exactly not accurate because there is a budget for TEF.
Because I'm convincing them not to give import permits anymore to private. Give it as NFA to import because that would prevent smuggling. And what's wrong with saying that you subsidize the tax to sell the rice cheaper to the poor than asking private individuals to import and they make it a way by which they smuggle, because if they smuggle, then it's also tax revenues lost to the government. It's better to subsidize NFA than to subsidize the smugglers, isn't it? That's why I'm convincing them when we met that you do G2G. Because the customs, they're in agreement that they can only stop rice smuggling if you do G2G. It's easier for them when you do G2G. But they won't follow the suggestion. That's why I'm talking to both of you, because you're part of the council. I just want to understand whether you're not supporting this. You are not supporting encouraging NFA to do G2G rather
In fact,
than
our
giving.
position, Madam Chair, was NFA to import. However, the council decided.
Why?
Well, I think we defer to them on the explanation for that.
No, they said that you're complaining that you are giving them too much subsidy and all that. But the subsidy is in paper. It's not in money. It's for gun taxes.
The TEF, Madam Chair, is not included in the subsidy. There is a separate item that the
But that's what they're
Congress
saying.
approves.
I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. The subsidy that we give them is a separate line item. Yeah.
Because, if you allow, because based on studies, with the statistics given by the United Nations, minus the rice that came to the Philippines, 2.3 million metric tons last year, and the amount that paid taxes, it's 1.7 million. So we lost 600,000 metric tons to smuggling. And it affects the projection because they never included smuggling in the projection of what they want to import. They always they turn blind eye to smuggling. So if you are 600,000 is smuggled, then there is an oversupply. So if you make a projection, then there is an oversupply of rice in the Philippines, and that will affect the farmers. If there is oversupply of rice in the Philippines, then nobody will buy from the farmers, and the farmers will be discouraged to produce more rice, and then we contribute to the deterioration of the rice industry of our country. So that's why I'm asking this question. So maybe you can give us a better explanation than that for allowing private sector to import, because I cannot understand. Being the chairman of the Committee on Agriculture and Food in the Senate, I cannot understand that. Yes?
If I may, Honorable Senator.
Sasabihin ni Secretary Pangilinan na magdi-decide daw, committee, hindi siya. Ngayon naman sasabihin nyo, kayo ang hindi, sila nag-decide, hindi kayo. Sino ba nagdi-decide?
Madam Chairman.
Sabi ko kay Secretary Pangilinan, ikaw yan. They depend on your recommendation. Sabi niya, hindi. No say daw siya doon. You will decide as a group. So I just want to know who is deciding.
Madam Chairman, our position at NEDA is that our economy is largely a private sector economy, and we want to enable the private sector to be as a...
Causing smuggling. Yeah. Alam mo naman, lahat ng nag-i-import na yon nag-i-smuggle.
Partly because of the smuggling.
That's common knowledge. You're turning a blind eye to the reality that the importer are the smugglers. Yeah. We conducted a very long hearing on that, and it's unfortunate that after conducting a long hearing on that, the DOJ failed to file cases against this smuggler. And you filed a lot of cases on PDAF, but you did not file any case on smuggler. Smuggling is bigger than PDAF. The loss in smuggling is bigger than PDAF.
Perhaps you can reiterate how much our revenues lost to smuggling. It was mentioned yesterday while you were away. Perhaps Commissioner Lina can tell us again. Was it or 200 billion, was it Secretary Purisima who mentioned? Remember, because we were talking about the recommendation of Senator Sani Angara on taking away the taxes imposed on 250,000 and below. And then a question was asked about what can make up for that. And you said we will lose 50 billion if that is done, but we can actually generate from 50 to 200 billion if smuggling was curbed. Yes, since we're at it, perhaps Secretary could answer Senator Villar's question.
That is correct, Madam Chair. That's based on various studies. It's a range. It's not a point estimate.
Let's empower Commissioner Lina, who I'm sure is competent to do that, and beat all the smugglers so that we have 200 billion additional funds. Is that possible in the next 12 months?
Yeah.
But why is it really? You know, I've been sitting here for 17 years, since 1998. Every year, there are committee hearings on smuggling. The same issues are brought up every year, and it's never cured. It's like wetting. We have a committee hearing every year, and whatever administration sits, not that we're blaming anybody who sits or does not sit, the ill is never cured. It's so entrenched.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not so concerned about smuggling in other fields because the players there are more sophisticated. They can take care of themselves. But in agriculture, you know naman, pag inallow nyo yung smuggling, ang maaapektuhan yung mga farmers, uneducated, poor, and all that. Maybe we should always think of that. Okay lang yung mag-smuggle and labanan yung mga yung ating mga local manufacturers who are educated, who are well-to-do, who can take care of themselves. But the farmers, they can never take care of themselves. They're uneducated, they're poor, and now we allow agricultural smuggling, and we don't do anything to help prevent it. Yung ating pong Bureau of Customs, sinabi na, I'm sure they're very intelligent people, and they said that they cannot curb rice smuggling if you allow private sector importation, because they cannot prevent their people from being corrupted by these very rich smugglers. Inadmit na nila yon. Tapos, sinasabi namin, mag-G2G na lang tayo, NFA, para mabawasan yan. Kawawa naman yung mga farmers. Sasabihin nila, they cannot do G2G because of for so many reasons that they have to, this is, what do you call this, free economy. We have to encourage private sector to import and all that. I cannot understand
Perhaps
that.
Secretary Purisima can answer that. A load of questions. Yes, maybe just to clarify also, are we not doing anything to curb smuggling? Because that was a statement of the Senator, especially with regards to the smuggling of agricultural products. Yeah, is there any effort to curb that?
Yes, definitely. And I think the performance of customs have shown, at least in aggregate, that they're making inroads because they're now collecting more relative to the growth of the economy. However, as we pointed out yesterday, we have critical handicaps. No? That's structural. In particular, if we make tax evasion a predicate crime for AMLA, no, it would be easier for us to trace cash flows. Because if you import, you will have to pay for your imports. No? So if you give the government the capacity to be able to check that, then it would be harder for them to hide behind the walls and the shields that they come up with. And that's why we're proposing that Congress issue.
Secretary Purisima, all I'm asking is you do G2G.
Well, that's for your rice. In fact, we do G2G. The last transactions were G2G.
They're going to let private importation
The
now
last
for the
import of
MEV.
500,000 tons was G2G.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think as suggested, Secretary Pangilinan would be in the best place to
No, whenever I
discuss
ask
that.
him, he says it's the decision of the council. It's
But
not his decision.
what you're pointing out to Madam Chair is that the ones that are being allowed for the private sector is what is referred to as under the
MAV.
minimum access volume.
Yeah,
So
but
then
last year they did MAV G2G.
Well, I think that's something that Secretary
Because
Pangilinan will have to...
sinabi na nung BOC na hindi nila kayang stop ang rice smuggling kung hindi G2G. Sinabi na sa inyo. Tapos ayaw nyo mag G2G. Ang question doon ang daming sinasabi na reason. But I cannot really comprehend those reasons. So maybe you should look back at it again and maybe do G2G kasi hindi namin maintindihan yung mga reason At tayo, pare-pareho naman tayong negosyante, pare-pareho tayong nag-aral, pare-pareho tayong nag-ano. I cannot comprehend the reason. Please make me comprehend your reason why you don't like G2G. What's the name of the council that is...
NFA Council,
yun.
Madam Chair.
Sino ba member ng NFA Council?
Okay, help me out. I know that DOF is a member. DTI is a member. BSP is a member. Department of Agriculture. I mentioned DTI already. NEDA.
Kinombing ko na nga, ayaw makinig
There's a farmers representative. We can submit the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about it, but
Or,
that's why I'm asking Secretary Balisacan what is the policy. Because that's one of the policy that you encourage private sector to do trade in the Philippines because we are a democracy. But if the private sector are smuggling, and we have proven that, why do we have to practice this democracy if it is not for the benefit of our poor people when you're saying that we are working for inclusive growth?
Hey, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just two things. My understanding kasi sa the way the rice market works in the country is that this whole thing has been going on for the last 3 decades, and this system of procurement, disbursement, and NFA monopoly has not really worked over the last 3 decades. And there have been so many studies
It's
showing...
not a monopoly. They just import if there is not enough rice. It's not a monopoly.
Yeah,
it's a small portion. I think if looking at them at the figure, it's 1 million metric tons a year. Yun na yung average no na shortfall. 1 million metric tons a year. Ngayon in-import nila 1.7 plus may smuggling na 600,000. That's 2.3 million metric tons. That is the level on the height na nag-i-import yung previous administration sa rice. Na galit tayo doon kasi sinasabi natin na nag-import ng ganong rice dahil gusto nilang ginagawa sila ng pera sa rice. Tapos ngayon, ganon din ang i-import natin. Ano ba yun? Are we really serious in what we're doing?
Madam Chair, I think...
If you look at the rate they imported since 2001, that's the highest, 2.3 million metric tons. Last year, ang in-import natin, 1.7, plus may na-smuggled na 600,000, that's 2.3.
Madam Chair, the prices of rice would have gone up by 20% more if we did not import that level. So the
that amount, that amount you ask the traders, all their rice full. Kaya maapektuhan yan yung
Ma'am, the prices simply reflect the market situation and supply and demand. And what has happened is there was huge shortfall, and in fact, the irony how is kung siguro kung wala na yung na-smuggled goods, baka mas lalo pang mas mataas yung pero ang problema kasi dito
yung pagtaas ng rice that may enough supply naman eh. Talagang price monitoring na yun. Kung i-allow nila na magtaas ng rice kahit walang reason, then that's the fault of the
Madam
price
Chair,
monitoring team.
Madam Chair, there was not enough rice. We made that study way back in 2013, and we were discussing this we had a number of meetings in our cabinet, trying to argue for the case of importing soon before the prices would spike.
For importation, but based on experience, 2.3 is too much. 2.3 is too much. Okay, because they computed the consumption plus the buffer stocks. 2.3 is too much. We have studied that. Hindi naman kami saying these things dahil ano, and we're close to the farmers. They're telling us that yung mga full ang bodega, so that would affect the production next year. Because if the farmers, nobody will buy from the farmers, then they will be, you know naman, the farmers, they're very poor. Pag nalugi sila this year, they will not plant next year. That's the problem. Hindi nyo lang alam yon, but their reaction. Katulad nun, yung garlic, 8% na lang ang production ng garlic. Mag-i-import pa sa time ng harvest ng garlic. So, bumagsak ang presyo ng garlic. So, next year, wala na magpa-plant ng garlic. So, yung 8% na natitira, mawawala pa yun. So, mag-heyday na yung mga importer, and then they control the supply. They charge us as much as they like. O, di mayaman sila. Kawawa naman yung mga farmers. O, yun na yun eh. So,
Thank you. I suggest that you meet with the NFA Council and we can ask...
Oh, we have met with them.
You've met with them already?
They don't.
So we leave that issue hanging so it can't be decided by this committee.
Yeah.
Yes, but at least it's on record. And we recognize the presence of Senator Grace Poe. Thank you.
I hope we will think about this and maybe help agriculture. That's all I'm asking from you. Okay?
Before you leave, Senator Villar, here is the answer to the alternative compliance. It has been very, very made strict because before, the alternative compliance would be for pag-ibig bonds, LGU bonds, housing, education. No. In fact, that's a reason why I amended PD 717 and had enacted the Agri-Agra Reform Act. And this is only limited to agriculture-related loans, right? There are 7 provisions here for compliance, wholesale lending to accredited, etc. It's here. But the wide range of alternative compliance before was already amended, so it focuses on agriculture-related activities alone. So perhaps, since you're chair of agriculture, you could look into that with the BSP and who is a supervisory authority for the Agri-Agra Reform Act. In fact, there was a very difficult battle for me then in 2007 because the banks were resisting this, but we were able to push it. In the beginning, the DA was supportive, but there was a strong lobby from banks, but we were able to push it. So just so that it's on the record that alternative compliance is no longer an issue because it is already amended.
Madam Chair, I just want to inform the Central Bank that I don't think there's a low demand for agricultural loan. I think hindi capable yung mga farmers natin to apply for a loan. So maybe your advocacy of inclusive growth will solve that you teach our farmers to be able to avail of financial services and how to do it. We have to educate them because I think they want to do it, but they do not know how to do it. So I think I praise you for that advocacy of financial inclusion, but I hope we will be able to do it, that it will reach our farmers and fishermen, because sometimes we have advocacy but it never reach down. Yeah. So maybe we should do more with regards to financial inclusion. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Deputy Governor,
Yeah, thank you very much,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, and we can assure the good senator that the BSP will continue to intensify its advocacy and implementation of various forms of financial inclusion. Now, with respect to the compliance, Madam Chair, there is also a provision in the law that alternative compliance is subject to joint review by the DA, DAR, and the BSP to determine whether modes of compliance directly target the agriculture, fisheries, and agrarian reform sector. So this is something that can be addressed by the joint meeting of these three institutions. Thank you very much.
I have my questions here. However, Senator Poe, I know you have another hearing. Is there something you'd like to ask the body?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, just an invitation to Secretary Abad to drop by. Maybe if you can finish here, we have just some questions, but otherwise,
He's invited also to your next
for the public order hearing for some SAF 44 benefits.
after this.
After this, only
There
if
are no
you
more
make it,
senators
because this
coming.
is also more
If
general
you will
budget.
not ask him questions now, then maybe after mine, he could drop by there.
Only if the time permits for
Yeah.
the Secretary. Thank you.
There is the pleasure of the chair, Madam Chair.
Yes. Thank you for providing me quorum, and I'll join you there, provide your quorum. Thank you. Yes. Now, I have a question to any of you. This is to Secretary Abad. Yeah. I think I need you here first before you go. Butch. Yeah, I need you here first before you go there. Yes. Okay. I will focus on the macro and will ask the agency the questions later on. This is for DBM, Secretary Abad. The cash disbursement for 2016 will reach 3.006 trillion, higher than the 2016 obligation budget of 3.002 trillion, right? And we understand that cash disbursement requirement is computed, well, I don't have to teach you that, you know that, the 2016 obligation program less 2016 unpaid obligated and unobligated, plus payment of prior year's accounts payable. So my simple question is, how much of the prior year's accounts payable will be settled this year? And how much of the 2016 obligation program will not be paid in 2016 that will be carried on again in 2017?
Well,
So that we understand the 3.002 trillion budget, which is the obligation program, and the 3.006 trillion, which is the actual total cash to be spent. Is my understanding correct?
Madam Chair, the obligation program for 2016 is 3 trillion 001.8 and 3.001 or practically 3.002.
3.002, correct. Yes, that's the obligation for 2016.
Yeah.
Yes.
The obligations that we expect to pay in the coming year is about 98.7 billion. So that leaves current obligations at 2.903 trillion. And if you add the obligations we would start with, which is about 102.4 billion, that will bring up the total disbursements requirement cash to 3005.5. So 3006. That's
Correct, yes.
That's correct.
So the difference would mean those that were already being paid, yung mga payables, ika-carry over for 2016.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
So the total cash that will be disbursed is actually almost 3.006.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, just so that it's clear. How much of the 2.016 obligation program will not be paid in 2016, but will be carried on in 2017? Can that be already forecast? 98.
That's
Point seven
due to
B.
be liquidated in the coming years, the 98.7.
And how much will be unobligated?
Well, historically, our obligation rate is 90%. So about 10% would remain unobligated, Madam Chair. If you go by the past, the past 5 years.
Yesterday, the Senate President mentioned about the historic underspending. May I be enlightened and clarified? I will not go per department because I'll do that later on in the budget, but whatever is left due to underspending, is that considered savings? You mentioned about savings being, savings allowed to be realigned. So in short, all of those underspent or unspent due to government underspending, what happens to that? Is it returned to Treasury, or is it spent for the next year because of the 2-year rule for spending? Or is it what is lumped together as savings and therefore allowed to be used for whatever purpose?
Well, just to be concrete about it, for example, Madam Chair, in year 2014, we carried over 290 billion pesos. About 190 billion was unobligated allotments. So these are appropriations that we already released to the agencies, but they have not yet obligated them. Almost 100 billion were unreleased appropriations, meaning those are appropriations that are still with us, and we are still due to issue allotments or the authorization to obligate them. Now, as of June 30 this year, Madam Chair, of the 190 unobligated allotments, about a little over 60 billion pesos have been obligated, meaning they are now being implemented. So in short, the 290 billion pesos are not really savings yet, because we still seek to implement them, and so we still seek to release the unreleased appropriations, and there have been amounts there that have in fact been released, and we still are requiring or pushing the agencies to obligate the allotments that we release to them.
At the very end, when these are still not spent, what happens? Does it go back to Treasury? Can the agency realign it for another purpose, but within the agency? Or can all the funds allocated by Congress be realigned and used by the President?
Yes. If in case the items that have not been released or the allotments not yet obligated by the end of the year are not released or are not obligated, then they lapse. However, if the executive finds out that some of these items can no longer be implemented because of some force majeure reasons, and with no fault on the part of the agency concerned, then those unreleased appropriation or unobligated allotments can be declared savings, because then either because there is no way for us now to implement them. For example, an earthquake happens in Bicol and you
Yes,
cannot build a
I'm
bridge.
actually reading your meaning of savings
That's
in
correct.
section 23. It says savings may be declared when there are balances of any program appropriations which have not been released or obligated, resulting from the abandonment of the project by head of the agency concerned, justifiable causes not attributable to the fault or negligence of the
Yes.
agency, etc., etc. Yes,
Or
and whose personnel services, which we yesterday discussed, right? Unfilled, vacant, or abolished positions, non-entitlement, etc. It says here, discontinuance or abandonment of PAP, that's Program Activity Project, right?
That's correct.
Yes. In the GAA of 2015, this year, savings has the same definition except final discontinuance. In letter A, in this year, it says final discontinuance. In the NEP of 2016, it says discontinuance. The word final, what?
Well, we decided
yeah.
to make the definition more explicit because
No, there is no final in this
yes,
year.
when we
Yes.
qualify discontinuance or non-commencement with the word final, it is rather subjective. You know, who says what does final mean? Who makes that definition? So instead of making that definition subject to anyone reading it, we qualified it with two conditions. The first condition is it is impossible now to either continue or to commence with the project, and that impossibility or inability to continue is not the fault of the agency concerned. So those are the two standards that can be applied in determining whether a program or a project can proceed, Madam Chair.
It is the head of agency that determines.
That's correct.
Based
So-
on this.
So they submit a certification to us that number one, we can, for example, in the case of before Yolanda projects which were realigned because the original or regular projects could no longer be implemented. So we asked the agency to issue a certification why either the project cannot be commenced or why it cannot be continued, and then that the discontinuance or non-commencement is not due to their fault.
You're saying that the deletion or the non-inclusion of the word final on this continuance or abandonment for next year's budget under our present NEP still means final, because it may be misconstrued as it's not final. The head of agency, there's discontinuance, but because the word final was deleted, unlike the 2015 budget, there may be confusion.
Right,
Maybe
right.
it's not final because 2015 it's final, but in 2016 NEP there's no final. So maybe there's another body apart from the head of agency who will determine the abandonment or discontinuance of that program, activity, or project. Should we put back the word final?
Well, the other problem with the use of the word final is since, for example, in 2015, we adopted a 2-year life of appropriations. One way that the final can be interpreted is to wait until the end of the 2 years. If you do that, then there's no way you can implement that project, and no way that you can use the savings that you may generate from not being able to continue or commence with the projects. It can be interpreted to that extreme that you wait for 2 years before you can declare it as savings, in which case you can never really then use the savings that you will generate. So that's part of the problem, Madam Chair.
So you would prefer it that way, and let's not revert to how it is now with the final.
Yes, this one
continuance.
we feel is more specific as to, the conditions that Congress can require before the executive or the department head says that it will discontinue or it will not start with the
So
project.
after the discontinuance or abandonment, then we have those funds available. They are deemed returned to Treasury, or
Well,
they can actually be realigned as savings depending on the conditions for which it was abandoned or discontinued.
That's correct. If
Who
the
is supposed to declare it? The head of agency.
if the two conditions obtained, Madam
Yes.
Chair, what we do is we require the agency to certify that is so.
Assuming the two conditions
Yes,
are
and
met.
once we receive the certification, then we request the President to declare them as savings.
If the President declares it as savings, who implements or utilizes those funds?
Well, at the same time that we ask the President to declare certain items as savings,
Yes.
we also propose to him that he approves the use of those savings to augment certain items that are deficient.
So meaning in each and every department, if there are unused, unspent funds, and historically we've seen a series of underspending since 2011, that at the end, once these provisions are complied with, are deemed abandoned or unused by the head of agency, and the President has the power to declare it as savings.
That's correct.
And once it is declared as savings, it is put together
Pulled
or
together.
individually, and the President solely has the power to utilize it as he wishes.
Yes, because that's provided for under Article 6, Section 525 of the Constitution.
Yes, that's a constitutional provision. However, how do we reconcile that with the Supreme Court decision on the realignment of public funds under the Disbursement Acceleration Program? Under the GAA of 2015, 117.38 billion was allocated, let's say, for the Miscellaneous Personal Benefits Fund, while 96.48 billion is its proposed allocation under the NEP 2016. For 2015, this year, how much of this 117.38 billion under the MPBF has already been utilized, and for what purposes? Now that we're already in the second half, is it possible then that the President could declare a portion of these funds as savings due to unfilled positions? Because you said yesterday that yes, unfilled positions can be declared as savings. Then how do we, if it's meant for unfilled positions, if it's meant for these positions but they're unfilled, so necessarily they can be savings.
That's
I'm
correct.
just confused. I'm trying to reconcile the Supreme Court decision on savings and but still, this constitutional provision allows the President to realign what was originally meant for other purposes.
Well, the Supreme Court did not touch on three sources of savings. These are savings from the personnel services that are not utilized. They did not touch that, which
There's no
means
provision that bars the utilization
That's
of
correct.
personnel services unfilled that could be realigned as savings and used in whichever way.
that's correct. The other source of savings that the Supreme Court did not touch was gains from efficiency. For example, you introduce new technology and you save money from LED lights. The Supreme Court did not touch that because the reasons are obvious. The third sources of revenue that also the Supreme Court did not dwell into was the savings from lower bid prices compared to the approved budget for contract. So those three were not, in other words, they were not controversial, so they were not
Yes.
touched upon. There were only two items that the Supreme Court dwelt on. One is the unreleased appropriation, and the other is the unobligated allotments. Now, the Constitution is very clear when it says that while the general rule is that a law cannot be enacted authorizing transfer of appropriation, it makes an exception in the case of savings. But then the Article 6 also says the definition of savings must be made by Congress. So it leaves to Congress the definition of savings, including, the circumstances when savings can be declared. That is why the definition of savings is found in the GAA. because ultimately it's Congress who decides.
This is piece of legislation which will decide what can be saved and what cannot be saved.
And when you can save.
And when we can save.
That's correct, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. I will no longer list or read these items on underspending since 2011, which I'm sure you have. May the committee be furnished, since 2011 to the present, the budget, the actual spending, and the underspent portion and where it went. You would have that. Maybe if you don't have it now, could you submit it to the committee so that we will just have an idea. This is actually in relation to Senator Recto's question yesterday on the unspent portions due to underspending since 2011 to 2014.
We can do that,
The
Madam Chair.
DBM would have that.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Once the funds are deemed as savings by the President, would those funds be spent by the agency where it came from, or it would be mixed in the general fund, or could be spent in any which way?
Normally, we give preference to the request of the agency from which the savings were drawn. So,
Yes.
like in the case of DPWH, they normally recommend to us the use of the savings that they generate, either to extend the road from which the savings was drawn, because normally there's pressure from the constituents from the area that since the money was originally allocated to them, but then since they save money because of lower bid price, it stands to reason that they should then just extend the road since the money was appropriated for their locality. So normally we listen to those and grant them to the extent that we can, Madam Chair.
Your office would have the history of underspending, which is available here, and the unspent funds in general, and in particular the agencies in the past years, and what was realigned for savings as approved by the President, and where it was allocated to which department.
Yes, we would
Yes.
have the records for those, but we don't have it now, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
could I request that the committee would have that?
We can do that.
Yes,
Madam
so, and also just so that we will, this definition of savings is so important, and so we will take a second look at that, and although we agree with you, these provisions are important, but the definition of savings is so important, we will have to take a second look at that. Yeah, in consultation with all of you, of course. Yes. So thank you. Now, this was mentioned yesterday on the projection of 7 to 8%. Senator Drilon is of the opinion that it may or may not be reached by the end of the year because of the 5.2% in the first quarter. Our economic managers, NEDA, says otherwise, that there could be more robust economic activity in the last 2 quarters. Whichever, if the GDP projection of 7 to 8% will not be achieved, just assuming, it will impact, of course, on our revenue targets. Will the government still opt for a 2% deficit? If it does, what expenditures will be sacrificed? I'd ask NEDA and the Department of Finance. Secretary Balisacan and Secretary Purisima, please.
Madam Chair, the 2% deficit ceiling was set with the intention of ultimately lowering our debt to GDP, which we have achieved. No? However, given the higher growth that we have accomplished over the past 5 years, no? There's actually room, if necessary, no? To adjust that deficit ceiling. Because if the economy is growing, say, an average of 6%, no? Even a 3% deficit, no, would result to a continued lowering of the debt to GDP. So this is not cast in stone at the expense of growth. No? Now, yesterday I wanted to add something to the discussion. No? The 7 to 8% is an aspirational growth target. This is something that we hope to achieve by continuing the structural reform, the investment in infrastructure, by continuing to open up the economy. No? Nevertheless, if we do not hit 7 to 8% this year, no, to us, no, if we just hit over 6%, no, what we would have accomplished during the Aquino administration is something that has never been seen the past 60 years of the Philippines. No? So it is really not a very bad situation. In fact, it's a good situation. So what we're looking at here is a potential upside. But I think it is important that we continue to target higher rates, because these are the rates that will allow us to really attack the perennial problems of the country, which is poverty, lack of investment in people, lack of investment in infrastructure. And that's why we're designing our programs to hit that. And I think over the past 5 years, as Secretary Balisacan pointed out, we've actually improved the structural growth capacity of the country by over 1%. Now, because the average before the Aquino administration was just under 5%. Now we've been averaging over 6%.
Our international organizations have predicted a 6.1% growth, no? IMF, World Bank, etc., even ADB. But we're really poised to try to make it to the 7 or 8%. But I agree with you, yes, at a 6.1, more modest than 7 and 8 is still something, nothing to be ashamed about. However, in your presentation, I don't know which agency said this, that compared to other Asian economies, the Philippines' actual GDP growth was 6.1% in 2014, ranked second to China of 7.4, India, etc., slightly higher than Vietnam's 6.0%. It said it is second only to China. It did not mention other ASEAN nations like Cambodia. Is that accurate? In 2014 had 7% growth, Laos 7.5, and Myanmar 8.5. Yes, so I was confused when it stated, unless I'm wrong in reading that, that we are second to China, but they were actually higher than us in ASEAN, in Southeast Asia. Yes,
Madam
Secretary.
Chair, if I may, we always qualify that with the word major emerging economies in Asia.
Is that qualified yesterday?
I always use the word major.
So the PowerPoint, which I read, and it wasn't there. Maybe I'm wrong. So I was confused. In the major, yeah, because we cannot compare ourselves to Laos and Myanmar.
Laos, Cambodia are very small economy-wise.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. I would like to ask you about the dividend remittances or the revenue projections of dividend remittances of GOCCs that has been pegged at 5.5 billion for the past 4 years, while the actual collections from the said revenue source has actually increased to 11, it was 28.7, 2012, 24.86, 2013, etc. In fact, the President has mentioned this in his SONA, that dividend collection in his term has reached 131.86 billion. May I know the reasons why our economic managers, DBCC, pegs it at 5.5 billion target when figures show that the collections or the remittances are actually greater than 5.5?
Madam Chair, as an accountant, I'm conservative by nature. So it's basically conservatism that basically we've assumed that there are many factors that we cannot control, and these are many GOCCs. No? But I must admit that this is on the low end.
Very low compared to their actual remittances of 24, etc., when
Yes,
we're only
Madam
targeting, because I thought that you knew something that we didn't know, that these GOCCs were actually bleeding, or that the financial difficulties, that they could not remit the same dividends as they were remitting from 2011 onwards, because it was something that the President declared in his SONA. Then suddenly I see a 5.5. Bakit bumagsak? Ang laki ng nakaraang taon.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really, as I
Should you not
mentioned,
adjust it based on historical remittances so that we're more accurate?
Well, we're still trying to reform the GOCCs, no? And I think until we've really established the baseline, which is in the process of being done, then that's when I think we can have higher and more aggressive targets. As we speak, the GCG is setting incentive guidelines and goals with them, and I think we need another cycle or two to really get a baseline reading on the earning capacities of these GOCCs.
Now, again, Secretary Purisima, about this was mentioned yesterday, but this question was not answered on the COCO levy fund. We received, how much was it? 60.1 billion pesos?
60 thereabouts, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
from the COCO levy, no? Which was not part of the revenue projection for 2015, correct? Yes. Do we have any unexpected revenues in 2016? Meaning, are there any other pending cases in courts which we eventually will win, where we could have unexpected additional revenues like the COCO levy fund of 60 billion for this year?
I will have to make a review, Madam Chair, and submit a report to you. But we have, to my knowledge, more pending cases on the downside rather than on the upside. No? The MWSS issue, no, is a potential downside, but obviously we're contesting that. No, I mean the concessionaire's claim. Second, there's an NPC Dama case that's in the Supreme Court that's amounting to 62 billion pesos. So,
Are these expectations on the downside already inputted in the present budget?
no, because we are on a cash basis, Madam Chair. Yeah.
If we lose that in the courts and we are, it is demanded that government pays,
Then
where will
an
you cover that?
appropriation will have to be made in the succeeding year's budget, and COA will have to agree that it be done.
Could we also have a list of those expenditures which we may have to pay by next year and in the coming years due to these pending cases of MWSS and the others?
Obviously with certain qualifications, because we don't know how the litigation would turn out. No? In addition to this downside, I mentioned downside, we're working on, there are several privatization in the pipeline. But again, when we will complete this is something that we don't have complete control of. For example, we're working on the Bilibid prison potential privatization, the welfare bill potential privatization. So what I'll do is submit a list to you, Madam Chair, of the
Potential other
upsides and
revenues, downside and upside. Yes, thank you. May we know where is the 60 billion COCO levy fund? It's in Treasury. Yes. It has not been mixed with the general fund. It should not.
With the EO of the President,
There's an EO,
it is
yes.
now in a special fund under the general fund.
Is there not a Supreme Court case?
A special account
Correct.
in the general
Is there a
fund.
Supreme Court case lodged on that COCO levy fund? No? On the utilization of that COCO levy fund?
As far as I understand, there is already a decision that this is public funds. No? There was, however, a TRO on the privatization of UCPB.
Meaning that the 60 billion will actually be put together with the general fund, or will it be earmarked for the farmers directly?
I will have to check the records, Madam Chair, if there's a TRO on whether they should be on whether they should be part of the general fund. But right now, it is in a special account under the general fund called SAGF 151.
A law would have to be enacted, no, to access these funds. I think we need a supplemental budget to be able to access these funds.
I will defer to Secretary Abad on that issue, Madam Chair, on on...
Wouldn't we need to a supplemental budget to access the funds?
Well, the Supreme Court recently issued a TRO on the two executive orders issued by the President, which should have led to the opening of the special account and policies on utilization of the funds. So right now, we're in a legal limbo, and if the law that's pending in Congress, which I think one of the objectives is for the creation of a trust fund, then that will certainly limit the use of the funds to about 3 billion a year, based on it becomes like an endowment where you only use the earnings and the corpus remains intact, Madam Chair.
So it's not been mixed with the general fund. It's a special trust account until such time that it is legislated. Or are we waiting for the Supreme Court decision or the legislation?
Well, as it is now, there is no way to touch those funds because of the TRO imposed by the Supreme Court, Madam Chair.
Another question I wanted to ask, again, it may not be readily available now, because I wanted to see how the present budget obligation program of 3.002 has actually, based on your 4 principles of spending within means, etc. The 4, how do we reconcile this vis-a-vis the Philippine Development Plan and the end year MDG and the next 15 years SDG? So would it be possible for you to do this for me based on the departments? Perhaps NEDA could help us do that. Where are we insofar as our Philippine Development Plan is based on our present status in every department? I don't expect you to answer that now, but it would be helpful for me when I speak to each agency. Saan tayo sa PDP? How much have we achieved insofar as the MDG is concerned per agency? Actually, I have some facts here. And with regards to the Sustainable Development Goals, I am not certain whether agencies who submitted their budgets to the President and then to Congress actually took into consideration the 17 SDGs. Hindi nga. That's why we will have to look at the budget and how it responds to the unfilled needs because we did not meet the targets of the MDGs, and how to align it with the very broad general principles of the Sustainable Development Goals. So perhaps NEDA could help me do that. Not tomorrow. I don't expect you to answer now, but if there's something you can say now, Sec Balisacan. In short, I wanted a budget that is actually not earmarked, responsive to our failed goals. We did not meet the goals of the MDGs, but we have a chance to help us with the SDGs. Perhaps NEDA could help me in that, and the agencies could also be helped in trying to realign their budget. Not realign to say, to revise their priorities.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may. NEDA has actually produced a socio-economic report summarizing providing the correspondence of what was targeted and what we have actually achieved by as of 2014, and we do that every year. But for 2014, it's already available. It's in the website of NEDA. But we can also
that's insofar as your Philippine Development Plan is concerned.
That's insofar as the PDP
Yes.
and the MDGs, and the MDGs there are also reflected there.
Then all we need to do then is to see how can we improve our budget per department so that we align it as well with the 17 principles of the Sustainable Development Goals. And perhaps in the next budgets, which will be, I guess, different personalities will be doing the budget, that's how it should be, I think, in my humble opinion. I think that's... say it will be different personalities. But you actually will still do the budget next year because you will still do 2017 because you will submit it. So you have one more year. So it's good that we're doing this. Then by January, we'll be working on the budget for 2017, right? It will be the submission to the President.
Just for the...
Which the next President will implement.
As what happened to us in 2010. But just for the budget preparation phase. When it gets to budget authorization, it's the new administration takes over.
Budget preparation is so important, and that's why we'll still be working together to prepare the budget in the first quarter of next year so that there's continuity, and I think I'll be here till 2019 to see how the budget that we prepared together will be implemented by the next group.
That's correct. I just have a suggestion. Well, the UN has not finalized. I think that will be done this September in New York. The 17 SDG targets, and I think it's really important to set priorities because 17 targets are just too many, and if you can focus,
it's quite broad, but we can actually identify which agencies apply to which principle. Yes, and some are actually overlapping. Now the AEC, I've talked about this. I tried to bring it up in plenary. There's not much discussion, but I know it's a DTI that's in charge of our accession. Now the AEC will be implemented already by December of this year, correct? Yes. Could we hear from NEDA on how this ultimate goal of free trade, movement of workers and goods, etc., for our ASEAN countries, including the Philippines, how will it benefit us? Did we input this into our budget this year or for next year so that our manufacturing industry, agriculture, etc., have enough, can cushion the effects of this free trade of goods and services?
The PDP 2011 to 2016, Madam Chair, plus the including the updated PDP was premised on this globalization pattern of globalization and increasing competitiveness. Increasing competition in the global marketplace, and the Philippines has had, and the plan has addressed the key constraints to investment and growth of the economy, and these are summarized into four constraints, so that we keep repeating. Number one is the very poor infrastructure support of the economy, particularly those faced by the private sector. Number two is the regulatory system natin that has raised the cost of doing business in this country. DTI is taking a lead role there, especially in reducing the transaction cost involved in various business transactions. The third has to do with institutional rigidity, yung mga bureaucratic red tapes, mga corruption, and the fourth has to do with the peace and order and security issues. Plus, of course, now we're adding resiliency issues, because that's another lesson we have learned in the past 5 years, that in many cases, gains are simply wiped out by an incidence or an instance of disaster. And so in our budget for 2015 and 2016, we have increasingly reflected that concern. So if we do this, the ultimate impact of that would be to reduce the cost of doing business in this country, to increase the competitiveness of our industry, particularly agriculture and agribusiness, and to provide a better playing field for our labor force. So, as you have noticed yesterday, we are making a very aggressive position on our human capital because at the end of the day, it is that human capital that would. So health and education is very high in our agenda, and kasi the way we see it, over the last 2 decades, our neighbors have been investing heavily, aggressively in human capital, particularly Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia. And it's only in the last 5 years that we are seeing a major change in our priorities for human capital. So I would expect that in the next 5 to 10 years, there's still quite a bit of difficulty for our labor force to compete with our neighbors, but with this major realignment in our budget, we believe that we should be able to position our labor force and our industries in a better stance.
The 4 hurdles you mentioned have been there. Bureaucratic red tape, the difficulty of doing business, so many permits, take so long. I see it. I see it in my young son who's an entrepreneur, what he has to go through. Permits, people on vacation, not signing here, and what more for foreigners who don't know where to go. So, is legislation needed, or we just need to rock the bureaucracy to be more proactive, or to shorten, have a prescriptive period for all this? It's tough.
Some of this, some of these, ma'am, are legislated enabled, legislation enabled, and for example, practice of profession. I think that our people are very competitive outside, and yet when it comes to practice of profession within the country, we try to, and in the process, we actually hinder the growth and exposure of our labor to new ways of doing things, new technologies, and so on. I think we need to rethink that. The other problem is the education part. There's that big mismatch between what our universities are producing and what our labor, what the industries, particularly these fast-evolving industries, are requiring. We have started focusing and putting more effort on vocational, but I think that we need to have a more aggressive stance on addressing that issue. So again, some of these could be legislation, actually legislation enabled constraints, and we need to address. Fortunately, a big part of that, the new law that you just passed, the competition law, I think would significantly change the environment for competition in this country, and that could raise the level of competitiveness of our industries.
I think Commissioner Henares wanted to say something.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Actually, if you look at the ease of doing business, there's a component where we deal with local government. No? The difficulty is, if you look at business now, they set up a lot of branches. No? With the way local government functions, each of them has their own rules. And then you have to, each business, when they want to open something, they have to deal with each local government. No? I think there should be a law or something that will make the procedure uniform, but allow the local government to set their own rates. No? But the uniformity of the procedure. No? And the secondly is, after we have a uniform procedure, there should be an electronic platform where everyone use the same. So when a business want to open a branch in Quezon City, in Makati, in Taguig, they go to a website and file the application, and the requirement are all the same.
Help us craft that as a legacy bill. That's so important because actually when we startups or anyone in business, they go to an agency and then they meet the requirements and then they still don't comply because hindi, may kulang pala, ito pala. And it happens everywhere. So perhaps does it need legislation to be able to do that? No?
Yeah, because we gave autonomy to the local government. No? So maybe for the opening of business and for renewal of business, there should be a uniform procedure and that they should all be tied up to a certain system. No? Because even if, let's say, the Bureau of Internal Revenue rationalize their system, you still cannot operate because you have to go to each city or each municipality. You have to go to the barangay.
Bill ang pwedeng i-file doon. Thank you for that recommendation. We thank and acknowledge Senate President Rinon. Yes, Governor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On regional integration, Madam Chair, the impact is basically felt particularly in merchandise trade. Because right now, 99.65% of trade in goods sourced from the ASEAN are already being traded without any tariffs. This is true for the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, and Brunei. Now, with respect to the other countries, that's CLMB, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, 98.86% of all trade are already zero-rated. What do these numbers mean? These numbers mean that our domestic producers and manufacturers have been exposed to a tariff-free, a very competitive economic environment. And for the last so many years, I think they have been able to compete with their counterparts. Now, the other important component of regional integration, Madam Chair, is with respect to financial integration. And here, in the case of the Philippines, we have been participating in the liberalization of financial services, the provision of financial services. In fact, 7 rounds of negotiations have commenced, and many of them have already been concluded precisely to liberalize the provision of banking services. In fact, we are thankful to Congress for coming up with Republic Act 10641, which allowed the full entry of foreign banks in the Philippines. Now, this would allow us to participate in the so-called ABF, or the ASEAN Banking Integration Framework, which would allow Philippine banks to set up operations in the other ASEAN countries, and in turn, based on bilateral and reciprocal basis, also welcome the entry of foreign banks in the Philippines. But this is going to be based on reciprocal and bilateral arrangements. There are other components, Madam Chair, including a more free capital account. That's the cross-border movement of capital. Also in terms of capital market development, and making the payments and settlement system more flexible and more globally competitive. These are the issues that are being discussed, and the Philippines is slowly moving towards integration on the financial side. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. Yes. Secretary Balisacan, you mentioned earlier about the bottlenecks, and in an article, I don't know where this came out, there's a clipping here, you mentioned about the reasons why poverty incidence has not improved, investment in infrastructure, which you mentioned earlier, seaports, flood control, irrigation. Why then did government not focus its expenditure program on the economic side of the budget, which includes infrastructure? Well, the social services sector has received the biggest chunk of this of the budget because of the CCT, etc., and the economic services sector is second to that. So if if these are the needs that need to be addressed to alleviate poverty, why did we not focus our resources into this economic sector needs?
Madam Chair, as I was showing yesterday, there are two aspects, two dimensions about the poverty problem. Meron yung short term ho, just simply because lack of incomes, but meron din yung chronic, and a big part of that our poverty problem is chronic, that it's transmitted from one generation to another. And a big equalizer in addressing that chronic part is education, human capital ho. That's why the investment in health, in education, social protection has to be form part of the arsenal for poverty reduction. Doon naman sa first part ho, sa chronic, sa current poverty situation ngayon, our understanding is that poverty exists and it's widespread because of the very low productivity of our labor force, and a big part of that is because of the low investment, the low stock of capital in the country. That's why and when I mean investment, I'm referring to public as well as private. Yung public, ito yung mga infrastructure natin, and then private, because of the private sector is a big part of the economy. So yung programa natin na pinupush natin is a massive focus on infrastructure development, because all research that I've seen focusing on trying to explain the roots of the problems of the Philippine economy over the last 3 decades point to the role of very poor infrastructure, very poor institutions, and the lack of focus on human development. So, and if you look at the budget, that's how we framed the budget, and that's how we updated the Philippine Development Plan. So I really believe that this budget is a very poor budget. It addresses the fundamental problems, the fundamental constraints to investment and inclusive development. That's how I'm not, kasi we are veering away from looking at poverty reduction as simply giving directly the poor some dole-outs and that's it, or giving credit subsidy and that's to the poor and that's it. That's not going to work. And we have many countries have been doing that in the past, and the evaluation of this kind of programs will not work if the fundamental roots of the problems are not addressed. So, and that's how we structured this budget.
Thank you for that. Now, I would like to ask about the Japan World Bank program for mainstreaming DRR in developing countries. I understand that there is a program established recently, just in 2014, as a partnership between the Ministry of Finance and the World Bank, with the objective of supporting developing countries in mainstreaming DRR. Are we familiar with this? Have we explored ways to avail of this facility? Is this already operational? Have we availed of these funds? Where in particular? It was just in 2014. MOF and the World Bank, with a $100 million contribution from the Ministry of Finance of Japan.
I will ask the Treasurer, Madam Chair, to respond to this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are still in the process of negotiating the proposed project with the Japanese and the World Bank on this. So it's not yet operational.
But we are familiar with it.
Yes.
We have been informed. We are familiar with it. Do we have any pending application? Have we met the requirements so that we can easily avail of this?
Yes, we will provide you the status and the remaining steps that we need to do.
do we have a shopping list of all such funds from various institutions and governments that could actually give us grants, not loans, grants with regards to vulnerabilities and DRR? Because we may not just be aware of it or may not just be accessing it, but it's readily available. Which agency is supposed to be in charge? Treasury, DOF, DFA should also be helpful, because in fact every post in the Department of Foreign Affairs should be aggressive in finding out sources of funding, assistance, grants for DRR, and there are many of those, which they should inform the DFA here, and DFA here should inform our economic managers so that all these paperwork requirements can be done and we could access it for implementation of our various agencies.
Yes, we have a focal body for this, which is the CCC, and the Climate Change Commission.
Yes, of course.
They're the
It
ones,
was created by the climate change law,
ma'am.
yes.
So we closely coordinate with them on the programs of
Very
government.
young commission, you
Yes.
know. We passed the law in 2009. I authored that. It was only operational in 2011 or 2012. Very young. They may not have the competence, the network, the know-how to access funds from MOF, World Bank, etc. I think you have to assist them, the DOF, Bureau of Treasury.
yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure who is in charge of looking at all possibilities where the Philippines can actually...
The Department of Finance is closely coordinating with them. In fact, we are already setting up the People Survival PFS, People Survival Fund, and we are going to implement that already. With
But
them.
remember, I'm not referring to internally generated funds. The People Survival Fund is an amendatory law of my climate change law, which I filed in 2007.
Yes.
It was enacted much later for some reasons here because a colleague struck down that portion of my law and said hindi dapat pondohan dahil hindi naman naniniwala sa climate change. Crazy. Anyway, so anyway, hindi ikaw yun. Babanggitin ko pa yun kung ikaw. So, anyway, so the point is the PSF should have been incorporated in the original climate change law because it's a funding mechanism of the Climate Change Act, which created the Commission on Climate Change, which is headed no less by the President with 3 commissioners,
That's right.
of which Sering is a vice chair and a commissioner. Okay, so the PSF is just being made operational now. In fact, there's no open call yet for LGUs because wala pa yata RR, or you're just doing it.
Yes.
If you could speed it up.
We're already finalizing that, Madam,
Yes.
and we already submitted to the
Correct.
to the President for his
Okay.
signature.
Please, but that's different. What I'm saying is that there are so many funds worldwide, apart from the much talked about but non-operational Green Climate Fund, for which countries are supposed to developing countries supposed to contribute. But like this fund, sayang if we don't use it. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's why I need to know more about this. These are grants.
There are
If
grants
we're-
and
there are grants.
there are loans also, Madam.
Let's target the grants. Bibigyan tayo eh. We're the
Yes.
poster boy of Yolanda. If we don't take advantage of that, sayang.
We've been proactive on that, Madam Chair. In fact, the World Bank has been very forthcoming in helping us come up with new financing arrangements for disaster risk management. And even the government of Japan and the French government, of course, is also providing
And German, GIZ.
a program
In
loan
fact,
for that.
the Germans want to give us so much assistance with regards to climate, but they mention it is contingent on the case of Fraport, which I think the Fraport case, no less than the Chancellor, I think, mentioned it, if I'm not mistaken, to the President during his visit to Berlin, the issue of Fraport, which is in the Supreme Court, which I hope will be decided on soon, so that German-Philippine relations can surge forward because they are so climate engaged and they have the wherewithal to help the Philippines insofar as climate and environment and DRR are concerned. So may I request from the DOF, please, and the Bureau of Treasury, the MOFWB funds, and let's push it so
Yes.
that we can access it. And then where do you intend to earmark it, to which agency, and that should be monitored as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Another thing is, again, I asked this in my first term, but I'm happy to see that it's been renewed. And I'm referring to the debt for nature swaps as financial transactions in which a portion of a developing nation's foreign debt is condoned, forgiven, or can't find a better word, in exchange for local investments in environmental conservation measures. I recall it was in 2001, I think it was Secretary Camacho who was the Secretary of Finance then. This was a byproduct of the state visit of President Gloria Arroyo in 2001 to the U.S. when she discussed this with President Bush. This is under a law of the U.S. called the Tropical Forest Conservation Act Debt Reduction Agreement. Because of the 2001 visit of President GMA, the output was this law of Congress in September of 2002. Eventually, they created a conservation fund, the Philippine Tropical Forest Conservation Fund, to manage the funds to be given to the Philippines. It was supposed to have expired, but correct me if I'm wrong, I understand that there has been a second agreement only in July of 2013. Yes. May we hear from Secretary Purisima, have we drawn from these funds? What agencies actually implemented it, and what is the outcome?
It's a $32 million. This is the phase 2. $32 million.
It's a debt condonation.
Yes.
In exchange for investments in conservation.
Principal and interest.
Yeah.
That's right, madam. And utilization so far is how much? For the phase 2, madam, we're still building up the project pipeline for the usage of the $32 million.
Who's the implementing agency for this? Is it DNR, Climate Change Commission, or is it this Tropical Forest Conservation Fund, which is a private foundation set up? Can a private foundation actually implement funds from the U.S. government?
It's actually a requirement by U.S. law, but we are part of the board of this fund that determines the types of the projects, and together with the DNR, USAID, and the U.S. Embassy.
Along with the MOFWB that I requested or status, may I kindly request for the first batch, which is 202 to 2013, and the second batch, where it went, and the outcome of this?
We'll provide you,
Yes,
madam.
thank you. Now, I asked this of Secretary Purisima last year. Perhaps I could have an answer now on the catastrophe deferred drawdown option, CAT-DDO. Again, the DOF, I believe, is the one that access these funds as long as a state of calamity exists in the borrower's territory. I understand $500 million, is it accurate, was given to the Philippines, but is this a loan or a grant by the World Bank?
It is a loan, Madam Chair, and we drew that down already. I can't remember which calamity it was, no? Ondoy probably, or Sendong. Yeah.
Sendong,
And
yes.
we drew down that $500 million. As we speak, we're in negotiations for a CAT bond, no? A catastrophe bond.
Catastrophe
But
bond.
not a CAT DDO. This would be a bond with an insurance component. So, for example, if a certain type of catastrophe hits us that's in the agreement, then that loan will be No, the loan will be forgiven. The bond will be prepaid. Yeah.
Secretary, may I, this is $500 million.
Yes.
It was supposed to have established dream units, offices in 80 provinces. That sounds very good. I would like to see these DRR units in 80 provinces. Are they operational? How did we develop these dream DRR offices? Are they under the LGUs, the governor's offices? Are they independent? Are they part of the NDREAM-C Council, who is actually tracking their performance? Is it accurate that this went to the DREAM offices in 80 provinces?
Madam Chair, this was a budget support cut DDO. So in effect, it gave us access to concessional loan. So this was this went to the general fund, not to the general the funding of the budget, not to specific projects. Yeah.
It says here that based on the drawdown from Sendong, we accessed it and proceeds went to the establishment of functional dream units in 80 provinces. Is that inaccurate?
Where did the cut DDO go? Yeah, yeah. It was a budget support.
So you're saying that the 500 million went to the general fund and cannot be was not earmarked for these 80 offices?
Yeah, that was the concept for this.
Really?
That, if,
this is the World Bank report. It said it came from the World Bank.
We'll submit to you a report.
Could you
Madam
kindly
Chair,
look at
on
that?
exactly,
Yes.
How this cut DDO was utilized.
It says here that the proceeds of the 500 million went to the following items: establishment of functional dream units. I was happy. Oh, I'd like to see how it works.
Yeah.
80 provinces, very good. But and development of the NDREAM-C of a monitoring system to track disaster-related financing. So I would like to see that, because based on this, I would, in the budget hearing of the DND, I would ask the NDREAM-C to give me this monitoring system which they supposedly generated from this $500 million loan. But if you're saying it went to the general fund, there is some difference of information from the World Bank. I got this from the World Bank. Could you kindly... It also said that this contingent loan was not renewed because there were other lending institutions that we were looking at that provided similar financing. So if we can't answer that now, could I kindly be enlightened? Because this will be used in my questioning of the DND budget that has the NDREAM-C that supposedly developed these DRR offices. So if the DOF says that the 500 million went directly to the general fund, we cannot track where it actually went.
When the multilateral agencies give us program support funding, they would normally support a particular initiative. No? For example, climate change or the 4Ps, no? Or institutional building. And what we normally do is just attribute certain things that are actually in the budget already to this program. So we will submit to you, Madam Chair, exactly what these attributions were. Okay. No, but this cut DDO was a program support loan.
Okay. Yeah. Before I hand it over to the Senate President, give no question. Okay, just a very broad question. I've asked my detailed questions, just a very broad question. And these are comments from various news articles so that we debunk allegations with basis or not, so that everything is clarified. The President has increased the special purpose funds from 368.729B in 2015 to 430.432B 2016 without details. That's the allegation. The said amount is under the sole discretion of the President, and only the President can release the amount and can decide where the money would go. I believe that the figures are correct, but is the allegation in order? So maybe we could hear from you so that we could also be enlightened. It's also for your benefit that these so-called lump sum, SPF, etc. are hinihimay natin para maintindihan ng tao.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to clarify this. The figure of total special purpose funds may be correct, but the assertion that the President has full discretion over them is not correct, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
para lang klaro, sinasabi, I don't know, sa media, ito ay isang lump sum fund, linakihan pa para sa 2016, walang detalya. Okay, I give you the floor to show us the details and to debunk whatever these allegations are.
Madam Chair, there are only 3 lump sums in the 2016 budget now that cannot be provided with details. Actually, just mainly 2. The first one is the calamity fund, and this pertains to the calamity fund proper, because the Yolanda Reconstruction and Rehabilitation, there are actually programs and projects here that were approved in October 2014. But the programs and projects nonetheless would still need details as to specific sites and amounts for specific projects and activities. So relatively, it's not. It's a lump sum, but it's not an absolute lump sum. Unlike calamity fund, in the same manner, contingency fund is also like a calamity fund in the sense that there is really no detail, because we cannot anticipate the contingencies for which later on the contingency fund can be deployed.
Calamity fund is under the office of the President?
It's ultimately approved by the office of the President, but it's processed by the NDRMC.
It is, but the funds, where are the funds lodged under?
It's with the Treasury, and
it's with the Treasury, and the office of the President will have to approve yung requests when the calamity comes.
Yes, subject to an endorsement coming
Yes.
from the NDRMC. So,
Yes,
in that
that's the
sense, there is
process. There is no fund.
discretion,
Correct. Exactly. So
because
that's
there has to be a calamity first.
Correct.
Yeah.
So these are funds allocated by Congress, which are in the Treasury, can only be accessed if there is a calamity. A natural hazard, a calamity, and there's a process of accessing it. It's not a standby fund in the office of the President.
In fact, it starts all the way from the locality where the calamity happened, because, for example, the municipal RRMC and then subsequently the provincial, the regional, they have to go through this process before it gets to the national DRMC, which is then endorses it to the President. So there's a process that accompanies the release of funds, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Yes, Secretary Abad. Let's focus on the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund. The first line says is the main calamity fund. That's 19 billion.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, this is lump sum, and certainly it is extremely difficult to itemize this because you'll never know what the calamities are.
It's impossible,
It's
Madam
impossible.
Chair.
All right. The second item, Yolanda Reconstruction and Rehabilitation, 19 billion. Can this be disaggregated? And does the budget, the National Expenditure Program, disaggregate this?
It has a disaggregation up to the types of programs, the agencies in charge, the amount available, but not to the level of specific sites and specific projects and activities.
Why not?
Well, this is something that I'm sure there is,
Yeah.
but we have required the agencies to make those submissions.
Yeah, because, it happened, more than 2 years ago. I am sure that at this point, there are already specific projects which can be pointed to for purposes of this 18.9 billion. We can already submit to the public, where are these projects going, in order to dispel all of these unfounded allegations that these are lump sum.
That's correct. We can make those presentations.
Yeah, if you can submit to the committee so that in case this issue comes up again, and which, keeps on recurring, we can say, all right, so the first one, you cannot dispute that the calamity fund proper. Tell us how do we disaggregate this. I'm sure they cannot. But insofar as the Yolanda funds are concerned, tell them, this will be for 1,000 houses and barangay so and so, etc., etc. So now they will see that indeed there is no disaggregation. There is no lump sum. If we can do that.
Yes, sir. We can provide the listing.
Yes. Now,
Madam Chair.
what about this People Support Fund? This is People Survival Fund. This is the funding of that law which...
That's correct. And
there's a board that will approve.
Board, no?
So here we cannot provide specific projects.
it's almost like the calamity fund, Madam.
Proper.
Yes.
LGUs
Okay, fine.
and
All right.
CSOs and POs would have to request
So I
from a
think
board.
that's clear. Now let's go to the next allocation to LGUs. This is the era.
No, it's well, as you will note there's a lump sum for death benefits of barangay officials. Again, you don't know when who.
Okay.
So
Okay, this is the of which what that's the benefit. That's the 50,000. You don't really count. No, if our critics will ask them, sige, you provide us the specifics of this item so that...
Kanino yung pondo nun? Treasury din.
Yes.
Lahat yan sa Treasury. Hanggang nangyari, dun mag-approve.
Yes,
etc.
yes, yes.
So,
The budget is an authority to spend. Okay, so the funds are there, but we authorize death benefits for barangay officials. Next time we are challenged to this, let us ask our critics to specify to whom this will go, and we are willing to print it, But it should come from them, no? Not from us. Okay. And then, what else? What else are there?
well, the special share in the proceeds of national taxes.
Yes.
There is also some level of disaggregation there. So it's not a complete lump sum. The only issue here is by the time that the BIR issues the certification as to what amount and how much goes to which municipalities, they usually come during budget execution time. But again, the whole idea of discretion does not apply here because this is earmarked for certain communities already, Madam Chair.
These are for the communities who are hosts to the sources of
That's correct.
of energy, etc., if I recall correctly. Now, again, we can make approximate allocations here.
Yes.
Huh?
In fact, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8
Municipalities.
applications of this. The first one is the tobacco excise tax, and
Right.
there's a list of provinces
It's
and
crazy.
production.
Yeah. This is the 15%.
Yes, this is the Virginia and
The
the
locally
Burley.
Burley. Oh.
Okay. The next one is national wealth under a law for mining taxes, royalties from mineral reservation, forest charges, energy resources, and so. The next one is shares from ecozones, the operations of ecozones, which are really hosted by certain provinces. And then value-added tax, a share in that franchise tax, and then 2% special privilege tax. So you can identify the host localities to
My
which,
suggestion, Secretary Abad, is that we specify this and we place a provision that subject to whatever confirmation once the Treasury has finalized its report on these amounts, something like that, so that it is there, but you have a flexibility to adjust it depending on what the final figure is.
that's, yeah, we will do that.
Yeah, so that nobody can complain about this. I mean, it's crazy.
The local government,
Yeah, okay.
the local government support fund, which is 200 million, that is a lump sum.
Okay.
And that is provided there because, there are local governments who seek the help of the president for some special projects that they have. So,
Where
just
is that
so,
fund lodged?
I mean, it's in the treasury. Yeah.
There's a process where, who's the implementing agency?
There's a guideline that is released every time the budget is approved on how you can tap into that, including a menu.
It's a menu. There's a menu for the local government support fund of 3.13 billion.
No, it's 200 million this year.
Where is it?
2016.
Where is it?
2016
I'm
is
sorry.
200 million.
Just 200 million.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
happened to the 3.1 billion of
The present,
2015?
the present.
That's the present one. I think
been
some of the bottom-up budgeting
That's where
funds.
the bottom up, the
Some of it.
grassroots participatory.
Yes.
Why is it from 3 billion it became 200 million?
I think there is saan nga to? 11.8. No, why is it not there? Where do you find it?
Friends, and who is the custodian of the funds? Apart from who is the administrator of the funds?
No, what? Bakit bumaba? Bakit bumaba yung... Why is it?
Because in 2015, you shouldn't have included the 2.8 billion as lump sum. It's disaggregated.
Okay. Well, what happened in the case of 2015 is that 2.8 billion of that amount is actually disaggregated BUB projects identified by the communities. So it shouldn't really be in this 2015 figure. These are really part of the BUB projects that are released through agencies of, so they're tucked in under the, depending on the project. If it's a school building project, then it goes to DepEd. If it's a local roads project, it goes under DILG. So, but they are required to be disaggregated before they are submitted. In fact, there is a site.
Website.
What's the website?
The 2015.
16 is 8.
If anybody wants to know the details, for example, of the BUB projects, Madam Chair.
The 2016 local government support fund is 18.4 billion, not 200 million. It's here. It's, I was just about to call you. It's 18.4 billion, the local government support fund.
Yeah, there is an 18.4 billion for local government support fund, and 11.7 billion of that is lodged under what is called the bottom-up budgeting program, which is allocated for cities and municipalities. And these are already, since they are disaggregated in the budgets of the agencies to which they are concerned with. The Calzada 6.5 billion project, this is a provincial roads development program being implemented with the ASEAN and the World Bank. And there is also a disaggregation of the provinces and the criteria by which provinces qualify under this program. So this is not a lump sum anymore, Madam Chair. That's why the only remaining real lump sum is the 200 million pesos, because that one has no details, Madam Chair. And we can provide you with the complete listing of both the bottom-up budgeting project as well as the Calzada project.
Yes, and this page, perhaps we could indicate who is the custodian of the funds is the treasury, but who is the administrator of the funds and the implementer?
Yeah, well, in the case of Calzada and BUB, the implementer is the LGU concern, and the funds are released directly to the local government
For
units.
example, the Barangay Officials Deaf Benefits Fund, who is the implementer of this? Let's say the Yolanda Reconstruction Rehabilitation, is it LGU? Is it going to be the NHA because it's housing? Is it going to be the ILG? Who's the implementer?
The general supervision of Yolanda is now lodged with the NEDA. And the implementation of the projects depends on the Yolanda project that's being implemented. For example, if it's agricultural project, then there are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are about 12 agencies involved in the implementation of that Yolanda projects. DA, DNR, Department of Finance, DOH, DOLE, DOT, DTI, DOTC, CHED, HLURB, NCIP, and Philippine Coconut Authority. So we can submit to you the details of that, Madam Chair.
We recognize Senator Serge Osmeña.
The last item that, Senator Drilon was going down the list. The last item really of what we may call purely lump sum is the contingency fund. It really depends on, the contingency that arises. So,
Who's allowed to access that? That's the President's contingency fund.
It's approved by the President. For example, we need to rescue people who are caught in a crossfire of a war outside the country. That's its use. Or an international conference is suddenly called, which is not in the ICF budget, then we can source it here. Or the President makes a necessary trip somewhere which is not in the original schedule of the itinerary of the President, then we can draw it from there.
May we know where the contingency fund for this year was spent already?
Well, parts of it, because it's not been fully spent yet. We can do that.
It's been spent already, some
of it,
of the two.
Yes, some of the two.
And that's subject to COA also?
Everything is subject to COA.
Yes. Okay. I will yield to Senator Serge Osmeña. Serge, ka muna. Kakain muna ka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only have a draft of yesterday's transcript. It's not final, which is why I usually ask for a holdover hearing after about a week to give us a chance to review their answers. Today, I would like to take up a topic that was carried in a column of someone. The President's lies on foreign investment flows. Have you read this? Of course, he's a very biased writer, but he's also a very knowledgeable writer. This is by Bobby Tiglao. He must be a good friend of yours. In the old days. Are you familiar with this article? When he was aggregating the...
I haven't read that article, sir.
Yes. What would be your... Have you read it?
Yeah, I have not read that article, sir.
All right. Essentially, what he posits is that the so-called 6 billion or 5 billion foreign investment in foreign FDIs, of that 3 billion were merely reinvestment of earnings of foreign affairs firms in this country. Ang sinasabi nila, okay, anong binibilang, anong sinasama, anong sinasali sa pagbilang ng FDIs? Why don't you give the committee the breakdown of the types of investment inflows that you would include in totaling up foreign direct investments? Sir, I think Bangko Sentral is here. The source of data for the realized foreign FDI comes from BSP, and they would have the
you should have
breakdown
it also.
Yes, sir. It's compiled by our Philippine Statistical Authority,
Yeah,
PSA.
so get it from them, please.
And I have also the total amount, sir, and I have also the report submitted by the different export processing zones natin, where a lot of the FDIs get into. And yan ang meron akong breakdown, sir, for the approved...
Not breakdown by company, breakdown by classification. For example,
the reports that we...
Go ahead.
The reports that we receive from our... from the, BSP details. Yes, sir, if I may, maybe you could ask BSP for the details, because I only have the breakdown as provided by...
Yes,
With the permission of Madam Chair.
Mr. Governor, yes.
Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, contrary to the allegation of the column, the methodology is not the BSP's. The methodology is prescribed by the International Monetary Fund for all its members. We have shifted from the so-called balance of payments manual 5 to balance of payments manual 6. Now, and in both cases, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, again, contrary to the claim of that column, both in the old and the new methodology, we covered intercompany loans, particularly borrowings of local subsidiaries from their parent firms abroad. In other words, both in the old and the new methodologies, these were already recorded as foreign direct investments. Perhaps the columnist failed to look at the details, and that's the reason why probably he said that in the past this was not covered. They were covered, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Now, the difference in the computation of intercompany loans under the old and the new lies in the treatment of borrowings if the local enterprise is the parent company to whom the foreign subsidiary extended the loans. Now, under the new methodology, Madam Chair, the amount of such loan is an addition to the investments in that instrument's component of foreign direct investment.
If it comes from a related company, in other words, subsidiary ka, affiliate.
Yes, Mr. Senator. Now, under the old one, under the old methodology, the amount is deducted from the other capital component of President's direct investments abroad, particularly on the asset side. So I think this will require some understanding of how bookkeeping is done. But in both cases, both in the old and in the new, the intercompany loans are covered. They are there.
All right. Did you ever respond to Mr. Wallace or Mr. Tiglao?
I beg your pardon, Mr. Senator.
Did you ever send a response, a reply?
I am about to sign the reply, Madam Chair, except that we had to attend the Senate hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the Senate hearings are a waste of time. Would you be kind enough to copy us when you do send that?
We will do that, Mr. Senator.
Now, we understand that there was a big drop this year. I know we can only measure the first half. What was the extent of the drop? And what
the extent of the drop, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Senator, is due to the fact that in 2014, the first few months of 2014, there were big ticket items. And those big ticket items are not recurring. So base effect for 2015, since those big ticket items are not present in the first few quarters.
What is a big ticket item? And why would they not recur? Because, of course, I'm not going to build 2 power plants instead of 1, but then the additional investment flows should not stop or should not be like a volcano wherein it explodes and then it rests for a few hours.
Those big-ticket investments, Mr. Senator, in 2014 include equity capital placements by Newbridge International in AC International Finance Limited. That amounted alone,
Wait
that's
a
about...
minute. Newbridge is just an investment company. It's like Texas Pacific Group. I think it's a subsidiary of TPG.
That's right, Mr. Chairman. And this is about 141 million in March, as well as intercompany lending to Hanjin, Heavy Industries Corporation in tranches of about $340 million. Now, these were not present in 2015.
It will not be present, but the type should be present. Of course, Hanjin is not going to be expanding.
No, that's the reason, Mr. Senator, why there was a drop. So, if we compare, let's say, the first few
there was a
months...
drop because we were not able to attract more investments.
Well, numerically, that is the explanation, Mr. Chairman.
All right. But it is a big drop.
Yeah.
Call it what you want, it is a big drop.
Yeah.
Now, going forward, how do you... Now, this is something I should ask Secretary Balisacan. What would drive the economy? Ito po, we have examples na papasok ang 2 billion, 3 billion when Vietnam gets 7, Indonesia gets 12, Malaysia gets 24, Singapore gets 67. Come on, I mean, this is constantly recurring. So we get a bounce one year, but that's what it turns out to be, a bounce. So it's something out of the ordinary for us. Now, looking forward, let's say God blesses this country with another 6 years of Liberal Party administration. How is the Liberal Party going to drive the economy in the next 6 years?
Our balance of payments projection, Mr. Senator...
Teka muna. I was directing the question at Secretary. Excuse me, Governor, but I think...
Yes, sir. Admittedly, we have many constraints to foreign investments, remaining constraints, Your Honor. One of these is I believe, is the foreign investment restrictions embedded in our many laws and even in our Constitution. I think it's high time to revisit.
You mean to say you're in favor of the proposal of Speaker Belmonte?
I'm in favor of
amendments to the Constitution to allow Congress to lessen or remove the restrictions on foreign investments.
Favor of anything that deregulate our economy from.
So are we, but your president doesn't seem to think so.
As a researcher, as an economist.
So therefore, another 6 years of this type of administration will mean we're not going to get to resolve that problem.
I could not speak for our future political leaders, Your Honor, but I hope that they will...
The political leader here is Secretary Butchabad.
Yeah, I hope that they will
like
take
to
this...
respond to that comment, Mr. Secretary.
I'm just looking forward to the remaining 298 days. I'm not really thinking about the next 6 years.
Well, you might be executive secretary, so you will really...
I'm not sure about that.
No, but really, you've been in place for 5 years. And even if I were just merely a businessman and not a part of the policy-making body of government, I would say sa magagaling ang growth drivers natin in the next 20 years. For example, manufacturing is down. Of course, manufacturing is starting to pop up a little bit. We've got the growth of the service sector, but a lot of this has to do really with the malls rather than and BPO, no? So low-level jobs, low-level income. So where will we get the growth? Because, Mr. Secretary, you may agree with me or not, but we were lucky. There was a very benign financial worldwide international situation where America was throwing money and we were benefiting. America was getting out of its 2007-2008 problem, and with all that money awash, people were, ang laki ng kan natin, ng investments na, but temporary, di ba? Hot money. Now, they're pulling out, so our stock market is going, stock market index is going down. We can't depend on that. But still, interest rates really drop, and I think the Secretary of Finance and the Bangko Central Governor will attest to that. We have never enjoyed such a low interest rate regime in all our lives. Tuwang-tuwa ako, you'll see 2% rates and 3% rates, and I've never seen that before in my life. I said, this is a fantastic time to get into business if you can leverage, you know. But I'm more concerned with what will drive. We can't wait for manna from heaven and then claim credit for it. We need something to drive it, and in truth, this should have been. Can we have a little order, please? In truth, this is a discussion we should have been having in 2010. Now, it's nearing the end of the term, and I'm still puzzled where we're going to get our growth drivers for at least the next 10 years. Mr. Secretary.
The focus, Mr. Chairman, should be to diversify the economy. The drivers should come from various sources, but more important, particularly industrialization. Manufacturing has to come in. One of the key lessons that I have learned from the past 20 years of development worldwide is that if you don't have a good industry sector, if you don't get a fast-moving manufacturing, forget about quality jobs. They will be very slow incoming. And that's why we, the past 4 years, we have been trying to ramp up investments, particularly trying to get ease that cost of doing business in this country. So that's one. The other one is we also have quite strong potentials in some areas of the services sector, particularly done. So I think we need to capitalize on the business process management. That has still a lot of space for expansion. The other one is tourism. The potential there is so high. Everybody that...
we're all talking, but let me interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me interrupt. Tourism. We set targets of 6 million. We just passed the 4 million level, and that's... so, in other words, they're way off from their targets. And I don't blame Ramon, no? Because the infrastructure is there. But the infrastructure. Doesn't the rest of the cabinet see this? Teka muna, in order to bring our guests from point A to point B, we have to make sure that the highway going there is first class, the port is ready, the airport is upgraded. That's the only way you will attract them. So the poor Secretary of Tourism says it's more fun in the Philippines and people come here and they have a headache getting from point A to point B. But if we had just had a certain specific focus on that, then the DBM with its big-heartedness would have funded it adequately. That even if there's only just one destination, let's say Boracay, it would have been seamless already. I'd like to share with you a concept that Singapore Airlines told me about when I visited Singapore in 1996, I think. They were showing me the new posters. Visit Bali, Singapore Airlines. Visit Phuket, Singapore Airlines. So the visitors coming from Europe would take Singapore Airlines, change planes in Singapore because, hindi pwede mag-direct flight. But Singapore was selling itself as covering Phuket and Bali, and that they were the same country, and they called it the borrowed attraction concept. That's how they were selling themselves, because nobody really wants to go to Singapore. At that time, they didn't have all of these attractions that Lee Kuan Yew finally relented on, like the gambling, the Marina Bay Sands, etc. So here, we just need to focus on one. I tried to explain this to our friends from the other provinces, because in this country, it's really hard to prioritize. If you prioritize Boracay, Batanes will say, oh, ba't hindi rin kami? Kami naman sa Cebu, we will complain also. And then the people from Bohol, what about Panglao? So you prioritize 15, 20 sites, you don't end up prioritizing, and you don't have enough money for everything. You will build one for...
I completely agree with you. I have been observing also Bali and the way Indonesia developed the tourism sector. That was initially just Bali.
Just Bali.
And then when Bali got so congested, they developed another area. And I think that's how we... And Palawan, for example, would be 10 times like Bali that we can fully...
Yes, definitely. And you're right, Mr. Secretary. In Indonesia, they only talk about Bali. But there's so many places to visit. But the main attraction, the main marketing thrust is Bali. And for the longest time, it's always been Bali. Up to today, it's still Bali. So na-attract ka dun, kuning-kuning, Bali. Then when you get there, you find out that there are other places to visit. And that's what we should have done here. Just pick one, Boracay, or... Of course, we know there are so many beautiful islands here. There's no doubt about it. But it's hard to sell it because the poor guy doesn't have an easy way to go there. These are some of my concerns. I'm looking for the missing chairperson. Yeah, I would like to adjourn already, but before I keep on picking on the Liberal Party. Now, there's another column that also struck my eye, which makes sense, I think, but it's up to you. 10 conditions that make tax perks work for the country. Did you read that? Huh? Business World. It's under the byline of... No. Huh? It's in Minoy Santa Ana's column. But it makes sense. It's basically what you guys will not argue with. When revenue losses they cause are not greater than additional revenues. Incentive given agencies, do we have 7, 8? You have Subic, Clark, Apeco, Cagayan, PESA, BOI, ano pa? Bataan. I mean, you know, all of this should have been collapsed into one. Zamboanga, which hasn't been doing it. PBDEC. So, every year we talk about this. We don't get to do it. And when we talk to you guys, we can't put the blame on you because you've got to work as a team. And akala ko your presidential candidate was supposed to be the driver on economic cluster. Ikaw yata economic cluster?
Yes, sir.
Oh, so maybe you should be responding to our questions. Why you haven't been doing what you should have been doing?
It might be form over substance, sir.
Well, it's our country, and I'm not. But yesterday I did ask for certain informations or submissions like the TPP. What do we do? Yan, simple lang yan. These are the conditions. They've already set the conditions, so we know already what we have to do.
They were supposed to give us, to submit to us among the submissions, the, where we are in meeting the requirements for the accession to the TPP. Because it says they're interested since 2010. Yun lang ang atin if you look at the Philippines as opposed to 12 other members of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So I don't know which agency is supposed to do that, NEDA?
Would it be NEDA?
Or DTI?
Actually, the lead agency would be DTI, but I mean, you know, the Secretary of Finance, Secretary of NEDA can do the same thing. It's really quite a simple matter, but we'd like to see something semi-official that says, here's a problem, TPP requires this, and we don't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is what we can do to qualify down the road. I know we won't be able to do it in 6 months or 1 year, but let's get started at least. Diba?
Will do so, sir. NEDA.
But I'm really embarrassed about that Millennium Development Goals, the poverty, not being able to bring it down at all. What are we doing wrong? Well, let's start there. Why has that number, the poverty line, the $1.25 a day, not dropped from 25% to 16% over the past 5 years?
No, as
Our deadline was this year. We were supposed to be at 16% this year, di ba?
Sir.
Eh, nakakahiya. Nakikita ko yung mga ibang bansa, yung kapitbayan natin. I think Indonesia is now at 10% or 8%.
They achieved their MDGs 5 years ago, sir. Yeah. No, as I said, sir, I presented yesterday, if the food inflation would have only risen at the same rate as the rest of the commodities, the poverty would have come down in 2014, and we would have had the opportunity to achieve.
Okay.
So it's really as I was.
Give me a chance. Give me a short memo explaining that. Alam mo bakit? Because I would like to see why food prices went up also or did not go up in other countries.
Yes, sir. I will provide you a memo. The same memo that I can.
Yeah, but that's the general. I'm asking him for specifics already. That's very broad. Mr. Secretary, going the way we are going, okay, I'll ask you to go out on a limb. When do we get to 16%? No excuses.
2016, as I mentioned it, when I made
16%.
Yes,
when
sir.
will we reach the 16% level?
I think if
that we promised to?
the conditions will remain as they are today, because inflation has come down, the employment numbers have improved.
Ito mga ekonomista, puro ceteris paribus.
Yeah.
All other things being equal,
Because unfortunately, I do not
remains
control the world,
president,
sir.
Secretary Purissima stays as secretary, etc. Sige.
No, sir. I'm quite confident that the 16 to 18 would be achieved by 2016. We'll not be able to achieve it within the 2015 because of that.
When do we get to 16% next year?
18 to 20 pala yung ano, sir, yung updated kwan namin sa 2016 target.
You will go from 25% this
To
year
18 to 20%.
to 18 next year,
18 to 20% by 2016, ho.
this century.
This century. Yes, kasi
I don't think you can achieve that drop of 6-7%.
no, sir. My examination of our experience there and many other experiences around the world is that when you have high growth and you have low inflation, the chances that you will have a very rapid reduction in poverty is quite high.
That's the trickle
That's the
down.
trickle-down horse, yeah.
But the thing is, it seems that those who live in the countryside live in an entirely different economic world. These are the farmers. And so the cost still remains constant. regardless if you have more money to spend in the cities, which we do. That's why we've got a real estate boom. There's more money because of the OFWs. Remove that OFW, we would be in the gutter, diba? All right, so that's $25 billion, more or less, being pumped into the economy, and Ayala Corp and Henry C. and GOCC are reaping the benefits. But it doesn't trickle out to the countryside. It's cost, excuse me, madam. It's cost we have to worry about. Because if you have too much money chasing too few goods, you're just going to pull up the prices, and the whole country suffers also. We've got to help the farmer with lower costs. The other countries nga, libreng irrigation, libreng electricity. The fertilizer was also free, you know that? Because the farmer that I was talking about yesterday in Thailand, when I asked him, what's your cost of fertilization? He was planting high-value crops and harvesting once a week, no? I mean, yeah, you see that shed over there? I've got 18 sows in there. He had a piggery, he had a small piggery. I compost. That was his fertilizer. So, librilin, fertilizer niya. So, walang cost of fertilizer, walang cost of electricity, walang cost of water. We do that here. We can... I mean, maybe they mean well, but they're totally ineffective, and they don't. Of course, we have no power over that. But just give us position papers like that, so that every year can say, oh, eto yung, we have our own report card, our own scorecard now. We'll have our own performance scorecard. But, you know, this is already our sixth meeting. 2010, now 2016. The president had his sixth so now. So we cannot pretend like bago lang tayo. Ano gagawin natin bukas? In any case, Madam Chair, I want to thank you.
Before you leave,
all of the resources.
was there did you say the target was 18 to 20% in 1 year, no? But now it's 25%. So what are we doing special that would bring down the poverty threshold or those proportion of the population below the poverty line from 25.2, which is now, Serge, you were asking 16%. When can they bring it down to 16? Is that what your question?
It was our target.
Correct, your target.
It was a target
yes.
that they made.
Correct.
Half of the 34%.
Correct. 16, but he said the target is 18 or 20 in 2016.
No, it's not 18. Our target was 16, around there.
26, where in the original PDP 2011 to 2016, when it was issued in 2010, it was 16, as correctly
But the adjusted target
then
now, you mentioned, is 18 to 20.
The PDP was updated in,
yes.
in 2013.
Okay. So, assuming it's 18%, right now it's 25.2.
No, that's 24.6 in 2014.
Well, it says here 25.2. 25.2.
Never mind.
Whichever. Okay,
No,
24 and 25.
24.6 in 2014.
What special activity, programs, projects are we doing that will bring us down to 18% by 2016, which is just 8 months or 6 months away?
The most powerful is really, number one, employment.
What we're asking for perhaps is, what is it in the present budget that we do, especially did we tweak it so that we can reduce the poverty to 18%? So we want to see that so that we as lawmakers, those who will approve the budget, can see, oh, ito ang ginawa. Kaya itong 24, sa akin 25.2, ay magiging 18. Crystal ball, 18 dahil sa mga formulang ito. Maybe that's what
I think
we're asking. Yeah.
If we get the programs as we are presenting here implemented, couple that with the ensuring that this time around we manage food prices well, and that we don't allow a spike in food prices as what happened in 2014. we should be able to achieve 18 to 20% in 2016. That's how the program was crafted. When we crafted the program, we do all this kind of simulations and assumptions.
Yeah, well, following the point raised by Secretary Balisacan, I think there are programs that either prevent or mitigate the possibility of the poor spending more or suffering from calamities. Like, for example, programs on PhilHealth, where you do not only increase the coverage and the premium, but now we allow for outpatient services in a substantial way. So that way, many of the poor people become even more poor, remain poor because of ailments or sufferings they derive from calamities. So if we can strengthen the social safety net or social protection, that's one. The other one is providing them with opportunities for gaining additional assets or income. Like we have an aggressive livelihood development program, both under DTI, under DSWD, and the likes. The other one is to enhance their capacity for employment. That's why the whole investments in K-12, in TESDA, preparation for job, and of course employment themselves, like the infra program, which increased by 27%. These are public investments that are unprecedented, Madam Chair, that we feel can address the concern that you just raised right now.
Actually, we have good programs conceptually, but it's in the implementation. You mentioned DTI, the SSF, the Shared Services Facility. That's very good. I've seen people in trade fairs and they say, ay, kami po yung sa SSF, sa Gimiras, kami yung ganito. The OTOP of before, the one-ton product, I don't know why, but it was scrapped. But we learned that from Japan, I think, 10, 15 years ago. It was scrapped. I'm not sure if it's budgeted now. I hope it's budgeted because LGUs were bullish about it when they were focusing on their selected products. Then you have the Roving Academy in DTI, where they actually teach and help them improve their crafts. These are little things. Then earlier when Senator Villar was here, of course we talked about the Agri-Agra and the SB Corporation under the amended MSME law. These are good laws, good programs. We also have the Barangay Kabuhayan Act, which is supposed to provide assistance to LGUs, which are 4th, 5th, and 6th class municipality under TESDA as the implementing agency. So all these put together are good. But how is it that we are still poor? So it's really in the implementation. But earlier, Serge, before you arrived, we had this matrix that we were going to request from NEDA, which you already have, the PDP and the MDG. You were just supposed to include there the SDGs and then kindly add the provision in the budget in which agency is this need addressed, so that that can help clarify things for us, so that we don't just talk on concepts, but actual items in the budget where these needs will address. So we failed in the poverty sector. We were not able to reach the target of 16%. Fine. So now you're saying it's 18%. Fine. Which, how is it being addressed? Then we see it there. And then perhaps we can look for more items in the budget, in the DA, in DTI, etc., that we can get it from this portion of the budget, from the National Greening Program, beefing up DTI or improving DA, etc. So we'll see how we can make the budget more responsive to the needs of the lower 30%. So we can probably meet our 16%. And that's so that we can also track in the next 15 years how we can eradicate poverty, if that's possible at all, since that's the #1 SDG, to eradicate poverty at all forms everywhere. That's a utopia. That's going to be yes.
So you see, Mr. Secretary, how Congress pretends they're in control of the budget. well, actually, under our Constitution, all we have to do is execute a one-line budget that says, Mr. President, you're authorized to spend 3 billion, period. Because they can always realign anyway, so you better talk to Secretary Abad.
No, that's why. You also have to help me. Earlier, before you arrived, you also discussed the definition of savings. So,
Definition
of savings.
Pork barrel?
Savings.
Yeah, but come on. What is the universal definition of pork barrel?
Here we go again.
No, because, you know, it
also
really
your closing
irks me
statement
when
yesterday.
people talk
Yeah.
about pork barrel. Suppose I ask you, Madam Chair, what is your definition of pork barrel?
I don't know. I don't know what pork barrel is. All I know is that we will look into this budget to make sure that there is no pork barrel.
All right. This
And
is
you will help
out
me
of
with that,
Google,
yeah?
which is really a crowdsourcing thing, but it's pretty. And tell me if you agree with this, Mr. Secretary. Pork barrel is the appropriation of government spending for localized projects secured solely and or primarily to bring money to a representative's district. Nandun lang yun eh.
To a district.
No, to my constituents. Otherwise, I don't get reelected.
So there's pork barrel.
Yeah, so there's pork. But with the definition Secretary Abad gave us yesterday,
It's the Supreme Court.
made it so, no, that's not the Supreme Court definition. Supreme Court says that was in violation of a budget rule that you could not declare savings except at the end of the year, no? Yun lang. But pork is, if I, Congressman so-and-so, approaches the President and say, Mr. President, can I have an extra 10 million for my bridge? Otherwise, I'm going to lose the next election. It's done in the States. Grabe daw yung earmark sa States. So it's not something that's out of the ordinary. And President Obama, when he first became president, was so enamored with his Mr. Clean image that he refused to sign the spending bill until his own chief of staff and senior advisors told him, Mr. President, you don't sign this, we don't have a spending bill. So he signed it. And nasanay na rin siya that he had to scratch the backs of the members of Congress in order to get things that he wanted to do. So we're aware of that. But it just, I feel funny when I read about this debate on what is pork barrel, and they haven't defined it. So they're at the mercy of Secretary Abad, because Secretary is a very definite definition that is as narrow as possible, so he can say with all truth, there's no pork barrel. Anyway, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank all the resource persons who have come today.
Suspend tayo, no? Yeah. No other senators have... and we can... There's no more hearing tomorrow, no? Okay. So it's shorter. We said 9 to 5, but Senator Osmeña is merciful. He will allow everyone to have a better lunch than what we serve here. Yes, I thank all of you, Secretary Abad, Secretary Purisima, Commissioner Enares, Secretary Balisacan, Deputy Esguerra, Treasurer Tan, Commissioner Lina, Deputy Governor Gunigundo, and all of our colleagues in government. Thank you. And kindly be reminded of the submissions. Yes. Okay.
We will, Madam.
Session is suspended.